Funny.
I wore a coat today because I knew it'd be cold in here.
Yeah, it is cold. It is cold here.
I was in it. Freezing cold.
We're on the bikes now, or? Man, we got new name tags?
Hey, step it up in the winter.
Yes, we are.
Yes.
Can you hear me?
So you can go through, like, for what's on that screen, you can put what the, whatever the attachment to the agenda is.
Georgetown or up?
Right.
She has a lot of drama. Sure. That's to be exact.
Hi, I'm gonna go to the ladies' room. So I don't see a whole lot of people in masks, so I don't think you need to wear a mask if you don't need to.
Library, 2 copies of
I'm here in person.
Yes.
David,
Yes.
And they were reworked. Well, but this is the ones, this is their,
Okay. And he'll have his name, he'll use his name when he signs it.
I've had family in the last couple of weekends, so it's always hard to get behind this and catch up.
I seen that last week and was that pretty good hiring?
Well, let's see, who's the last attorney we hired was Mackenzie Pete, so it's been about 6 months since we've hired attorneys. Hey, Cleo.
Andrew, how are you?
We're hovering right around 20 right now, I'd say. It's always fluctuating, I think we're about 20 right now. We're 5 equity partners, 3. We do have the trailer. Sometimes you can get to a level where you're going to hold down the partner at that level.
Okay. Fine, thank you. Right, I got you.
Yeah, that's what it kind of holds out, and then when it works, and yeah. And it's a little bit of we made a couple of mistakes early on, bringing in equity partners that we didn't really know that were he's very thoughtful. And so, yeah, right. But we decided to do a little bit more of a transitionary period to like get to know them, the non-equity partners come to all of our equity partner meetings. We get to see them and hear everything, but just a little bit of getting to know you a little bit better. Sure. What do you say, Janelle?
Hi.
How you doing?
I'm okay, how about you?
Good.
I lost my pen.
Good, I guess. Yeah, I gave one away this morning to the city manager in Rehoboth. I gave you one. For their closure.
Art and bloom sticking.
I need to see one of these things.
We're still going at 1:30. Is that
For the fire?
They have 2 meetings. They have
And you call it the toaster, I call it the fire.
Walk down the hall and it's snowing.
You got it, but that's one heck of a memory.
through the whole discussion, but other ways
I know he wasn't happy about it.
I remember.
Well, speaking of tortillas, I used the air fryer thing to heat up taco shells.
See,
Worked just fine.
Nothing happened.
No, I didn't burn the thing down.
No cap.
No fire.
It must be the
Well, but that was different, because that was just a toaster.
Yeah, and he laid it on its side while it stuck.
No.
He did?
Memory.
That's not how you use a toaster.
From the inside.
Oh, excuse me. All right, so I've got to, apparently the Zoom link at the bottom of the agenda is not working. Who, your mom?
Yes. I told you, remember?
Do you have it?
My problem is I changed my password.
There we go.
We're like, we're just gonna go for another 3 hours.
Oh, he was there.
Was he on your team?
Yeah, a couple years ago, but he said he late canceled.
I just got an email from, or a text from Bonnie, the Zoom link's not working.
I know, I'm working on it. Have her cut and paste it into the browser. Yeah, I'm in the agenda to see. I mean, we've got a number of people that are in on Zoom.
That's probably what I got my call from just now.
Yeah.
Same thing, something's wrong with it.
She can also just watch the video through the YouTube page. Right, well, and which is right on iCompass.
There's lots of ways.
So are they working on that, or should I tell us something?
I already just said something to him. How are you? Right.
Hey, Carolyn.
Hi, honey, how are you? I'm good.
What do you think, Christine? We okay?
I'm just on time, actually.
There's more people coming on.
I'm sorry.
There's more people coming on now,
Okay.
but
What are you up to?
there's 6. Okay.
That's not too bad.
Are we ready? Are you ready?
Hold on, I'm publishing with the updated link, so
Okay.
give me like
All right.
10 seconds.
No problem. Cool. Yeah, right. Sure.
I had a question about a couple of things, and they all came through on my email for me. Did you get them too? Everything from the 202
Next time.
3rd Street House. There's a whole thing on from Mandalas.
When did that come in?
About,
What are you looking for?
I'm telling you, this stuff that came in from Mandalas on 202.
On 202. On 302?
Is it 302 or 202? Well,
202, yeah. 202,
yeah.
3rd Street Market.
Yes, you need to see
It's just
it.
a revised statement, a revised agreement, that's all.
Well, yeah, but it's saying something I didn't know. Well, it's saying that,
Can you try the
It
link
just
now?
says everything
Refresh.
from
It
if-
did work?
Speakers are on.
Okay, so it's working now.
It's all working?
Yep.
Okay, so I think we can go ahead and get started. So, good evening. It is August the 9th at 6:31 p.m., and we are here for the monthly meeting of Mayor and City Council. I ask that you all rise and join in the Pledge of Allegiance, if you would, please. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So I'll just take a moment of silence. Thank you very much. Please be seated. Thank you for taking time out of a summer Monday night to join us, although I guess the rain may have enabled people to feel like they didn't mind spending the evening indoors. But a few announcements before we get started. With summer passing quickly, we have certainly seen an increase in visitors and tourists who have been coming here, and obviously we've also all heard about the increase of the Delta variant and the COVID virus and concerns about it. While the governor's state of emergency has been lifted, and this community is highly vaccinated, there is still reason to be cautious. Wearing a mask is optional in most places. However, I have seen, and I'm sure each of you here have seen, an increased number of people wearing masks in larger gatherings. And I would encourage everyone to be vigilant and continue to wear your mask as you feel appropriate. And if you haven't gotten vaccinated, I hope you'll give serious consideration to being vaccinated in the very near future. It is seemingly our best defense at this point. On another note, our trail system continues to be extremely popular. I urge you, as I have every month, to please be cautious as you approach the trail. And if you're a user of the trail, please respect the rules of the road and stop before you try to cross on your bicycle. Bicycles follow the same rules as vehicles do. And we've been very fortunate we haven't had any serious incidents with our trails and vehicles this summer. I'd like to get through the summer and on into next year without any of these problems happening. This morning I attended the start of the lodge at Historic Lewes, a very exciting project that we've worked hard on, getting approved, and they are now in the point where they're beginning to come out of the ground with steel. They expect that they will be 20 months before they operate. But this is a massive project for us and will offer a lot of alternative living styles for residents of our community who may otherwise be aging out of their homes. Interesting of note, I was talking with the developers today, and this project is a $70 million project, so it brings a significant amount of opportunity for income and work as well as revenue for the city. So I think it's a very important project and one that we're happy to see happening. I'll remind you again about the heat index. They say that the rest of this week and on into the weekend we're going to be having temperatures that will exceed possibly 100 degrees. So make sure you stay hydrated and to stay out of the sun as much as possible. You'll note a little later in the agenda here we have a proclamation concerning the Harbor of Refuge being recognized with the U.S. Postal Service's Lighthouse stamp collection. And that ceremony actually occurred Friday in New Jersey. However, Senator Carper and others will be coming here to the ferry terminal to have our own ceremony for our Harbor of Refuge on next Monday at 10 a.m. Everyone is welcome to join. It should be very interesting. It's quite a coup, and my hat's off to the Delaware Lighthouse Association for their efforts to get that recognition. They've worked hard to make sure that the lighthouse remains in usable condition, and when they took it over, it had been, although it's been in continuous operation, it was in pretty sad shape on the inside. They've done a wonderful job of going out there. I know Robert Kennedy's sitting back there, and he's a member of their board, and I think it's a great opportunity here. We're very happy about it. Thank you. So with that, are there any other additions or deletions from the table that anyone has at this point? Okay, moving then on to item E1 as a proclamation for seasonal employees. Every year, Lewes is fortunate to have a fair number of seasonal employees that make it possible for us to function as a city as we deal with the seasonality of our residents. So this year we've decided we'd like to have a proclamation. I'd like to take a moment to read it for you. And normally we do not read proclamations at the meeting, but this one I think is very important, and I think we need to recognize our folks who have been here this summer. And it may seem early that we're doing this, but some of our seasonal folks are getting ready to go back to college or going off to do other things, and so this is the best time, while everyone's still in our employment, to recognize them. So the proclamation reads as follows: whereas the city of Lewes is a coastal community that experiences increased seasonal residents and visitors during the summer season, and whereas due to the fluctuation in population, the city relies on seasonal/summer employees to meet the needs of the community, and whereas these seasonal employees can be found in all aspects of city operations, including beaches, marina operations, building and street maintenance, parking enforcement, and administration, and whereas the efforts of these employees significantly contribute to the consistent outstanding service provided by the city to our residents and visitors. Therefore, I, Theodore W. Becker, as mayor of the city, on behalf of the citizens of Lewes, extend our sincere appreciation to the following individuals who were employed by the city of Lewes during the summer of 2021. And these 21 people are named, and we'll start with the parking enforcement. That's Dennis Crawford, Bill Ash, Clarence Bauman, Bob Castellana, Gary Eckenrode, Gaber Kittel, Judy Sealant, Tim Smith. Seasonal maintenance personnel included Kazaki Carroll, Lance Kaufman, William Kraus, Josh Melendez, Thomas Reeves. Our marina operations are operated under John Lafferty as the dock master and Marcus Gromowski as his assistant. Our lifeguards include Alicia Hartman, Wesley Kirshner, Kyle Berdee, Biden Fannin, Raymond Kalamotwitz, Elver Mendez Velasquez, Sydney Mundock, and Catherine Van Pelt, and finally administration, Emily Cook and Christine Moore. And we have Christine Moore here working with us tonight. Thank you for operating. So we thank all these people for their service. And this proclamation will be passed on to each of those as we commemorate their service with a luncheon on Friday. Right, Anne-Marie?
Yes,
Okay.
for the
Seasonal.
parking and lifeguards, yes.
Okay. So I mentioned we're going to skip the proclamation for the Lighthouse. It will come up, we'll actually provide it on Monday of next week. We have appointment of item E3, appointment to the Capital Projects Committee. I would suggest that we consider the appointment of all members of City Council, as well as Mary Lou Welbach from our Finance Committee, Anne Marie Townsend as an ex officio member, Ellen Lorraine McCabe as an ex officio member, and Austin Colliman, the new Executive Director of the Board of Public Works, as an ex officio member, and Charlie O'Donnell as the City Engineer as members of this committee. I'd entertain, if everyone's in concurrence with that, we can accept that by common consensus. Okay? Great. Finally, on item E4, we have an appointment for the Parks and Rec Commission to fill the unexpired term of Lou Papp. Lou Papp has been a wonderful member of our Parks and Recreation Commission for 17 years. When he accepted the appointment approximately 2 years ago for a 3-year term, he advised me at the time that he may not fill out that full term. And indeed, last month he called and said, I need to retire. We certainly thank Lou for all of his efforts to work with the Parks and Recs. You may not know exactly which park Lou was responsible for, but he was looking after primarily Swannondale Park, a wonderful park that shared between the state with the Swannondale Museum and, of course, the chambers located with there. And it's a park that is sort of ground zero for the city in terms of right in the core of downtown. So we thank Lou for all of his service, and we will recognize that separately. But Lou also has had one of his volunteers step up who worked with him and expressed an interest to taking over his position in the Parks and Rec Commission. And so I would ask Council's consideration of Ray Fratella, a relatively new member of the city, but has an active interest in gardening and grounds maintenance, and he lives in Canary Creek. I've met with him. He's worked with Lou over the last year and a half and is very interested in assuming that role. So, okay, if we can all agree to that, we can do that by common consensus. Okay, great. Thank you. Then moving on to item F, which is the consent agenda. We have the mayor and city council meeting minutes, the Board of Public Works meeting minutes, which I don't think we've received. Okay, the financial activity reports, the police activity reports, fire department activity reports. Is there anything that anyone wants to exclude from that for pull out for separate conversation? Okay, hearing none, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda? Thank you. Thank you, Carolyn. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Tim.
If your mics are picking up for some reason. Okay,
Here we are.
Thank you.
okay, sorry about that.
Yeah, you're all on now. Okay. So we have motion and second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Moving now on to the presentation of City Manager's report. Anne Marie?
All right, so Christine's pulling up the PowerPoint now that Melody keeps me prepared with visual aids so that you don't die of boredom. Got it. There we go. Okay, so we'll start, the next slide is capital projects. We did hold the pre-construction meeting for the restroom addition to the Margaret H. Rollins Community Center. So that project will actually start on August 18th. We had cameras and streaming equipment installed in early July, and we're able to hold a couple of meetings over there. We have 3 cameras, so it's a little more intricate and technical than over here, but and we actually are going to be installing an additional camera here to get, if there's somebody at the podium, you'll be able to get them from the front. So our staff is all working to learn that new system. The Canal Front Park tennis, pickleball, basketball court resurfacing is delayed at this point because we're waiting on the product. So we are hoping that we will be able to start in early September, but we haven't gotten any updates, have we? Okay. We had a pre-bid meeting for Phase 25 street project on July 22nd, and that includes the rehabilitation of Ship Carpenter Square and installation of crosswalks at Cedar and Savannah. The bid opening was August 3rd, and the bid recommendation is on tonight's agenda. In terms of emerging from the pandemic, as Mayor Becker stated, cases are rising in the county and statewide. We continue to encourage vaccination. We did have vaccination and testing offered at National Night Out on August 3rd. And in accordance with the new FOIA statute, we are holding all of our meetings in person, but also offering a virtual option. And under that new statute, we can do a hybrid meeting. And previously, it was difficult to do that. But as long as we have an anchor location that's open to the public, we're able to hold the hybrid meeting. So, especially with cases going up, I know that that's been important to some of the members of our committees and commissions. Planning and land use, mayor and city council approved the subdivision plan for Lewes Waterfront Preserve in July, and the planning commission recommended approval of Old Town at White's Pond, which again is on tonight's agenda to set a public hearing. Go to the next slide. Okay. The planning commission held a public hearing on Fisher's Cove regarding, it was remanded by mayor and city council, you'll recall, and they held the hearing. The record remained open until July 30th, so they will consider that at their August meeting. The annexation zone subcommittee and the subdivision code subcommittee both met during July. We had 2 site plans submitted that are going to be reviewed by the Joint Site Development Ad Hoc Review Committee in August, and that is August 26th. 10 a.m. Okay. And then the city held land use training for Planning Commission and Mayor and City Council, where Max Walton from Conley Gallagher was the instructor. I think that, and that is, for anybody who's interested, I find Max very interesting. He makes something that's a little dry, not so boring. So that is available on our YouTube channel. Due to the high level of contamination of recycling in Delaware, inspectors were visiting the waste transfer station to inspect loads. So we did have one of our loads inspected by the inspectors, and we have not heard that it was non-compliant, so I'm hopeful that that means it's compliant. Our guys really do pay a lot of attention, and if they start to see bags or other materials that aren't supposed to be in there, they'll pull the can back and call the trash truck to come get it. So, but we do need to continue to provide education to our residents so that we can make sure that we do not end up on the naughty list at the landfill. I've mentioned this before, but I want to mention it again. If we have more than 10% of non-recyclable material in a load that we take to the landfill, we pay a tipping fee for it. That can be very expensive. We don't pay a tipping fee for recycling. So, and we're one of the few towns remaining that pays for trash out of our taxes and not with a special fee for trash removal. And we provide good service. It's really important. In addition to being environmentally friendly to recycle, it also is budget conscious. So I would just remind you, please, the big offender is please do not put styrofoam and plastic bags in your recycling.
Just comment for a moment. I know that some of the commercial haulers are actually installing cameras to monitor dumpsters as they're being dumped into the trucks.
We do have, our automated truck has a camera, and Rodney is able to pull the can
We're able
down
to
a piece.
monitor this ourselves. I think that's great. Thank you.
And where the staff are on the backs of the trucks, I mean, they look. I mean, they've been very good about that.
Good.
It was a busy month, not surprising, on building permits. Mayor, you mentioned the lodge. That permit was issued in July. Then, again, for the trash, I'm putting a last year comparison. So you can see that our recycling volume is down about 10 tons from the same month last year. However, if that means that there's less contamination, it's
a good thing.
You want high participation in recycling, but you don't want a large volume of stuff that shouldn't be in there. So in the conversations I've had with DENREC, my priority for the city is trying to work on the contamination issue, and then once we can kind of make more progress on that, we can work more on the diversion. We are now starting to report the various recreation permits. The number that just jumps out at me, in the month of July, we issued 146 bonfire permits. So there's 2 people on our staff that probably aren't surprised by that, and that's Allison Kirk, who used to be the one issuing them, and Janet Reeves, who now issues them. But that's a lot of permits in a month. So, and that topic will come up shortly. And then we had 10 new business licenses and 5 new rental licenses issued. The traditional 4th of July activities were held. Melody, our local government management fellow who's sitting over here, has been hard at work designing a new newsletter called the Lewes Light that is going to be sent to all addresses in the city. We expect that to go out later this week. Several staff attended a couple of webinars. One, there was a webinar called Courageous Conversations, and the picture of the woman who's on this, the screen, she was one of the speakers, and this Courageous Conversation discussion was about disabilities and discrimination against people with disabilities. And so this young lady was attacked by a dog as a child, and she's talked about, and she's an assistant city manager in Colorado, and she talked about just the discrimination. So the Courageous Conversation stuff that ICMA is doing is really trying to, it's helping us to learn from the experiences of the last year. The next one, Mayor Becker, Councilperson Ritzert, and I, in addition to Austin, I think Darren was there, and press, participated in our every other month meeting with Chesapeake Natural Gas regarding gas expansion. I've been participating in meetings every other week with DENREC. They have a tax ditch modernization working group, and it's intense, it's technical, but it's important because we do have areas in our community that are affected by tax ditches, and I think that the more we can be part of the discussion with DENREC, the better we can serve the community. We also, several of us participated in a call with the governor's office regarding legal resources for the ARPA funding allocation. Actually, Mayor, you participated in that as well, right? We came to the conclusion that what they had talked about was taking, a portion, maybe 1% or something of the allocation from municipalities and pulling it to hire legal counsel that would advise all of us so that we're not having redundancy. We kind of feel like between Melody, who's been very deep into the ARPA funding, Ellen Lorraine, myself, and just a little bit of Glenn's time, we can do it with probably spending far less money than actually going into this larger thing. So at this point, we do not expect to go into that. The bond bill funding, I think you all know that the state ended the fiscal year with a surplus, which is not common. So there was I think, community reinvestment money that they call it, and the city received $40,000 for capital projects and $45,000 for a walkway project at St. Peter's. The BPW also received some direct funding, as did a number of nonprofits in the city of Lewes. So, that is definitely, I think that the way the state's looking at surplus is to put it into capital so that you're not creating a long-term operating obligation. So we are the recipients of some of that. So that's what I've got.
Well, thank you, Anne Marie. I think also that you have a photograph here, which the Lewes Executive Committee on the Resiliency also started meeting, and that worked.
Yeah, how did I miss that? Yes.
You had a photograph here, and
yeah, it's in the report.
that group is just beginning to work, and I'm very excited about what they will be able to do.
We'll meet again tomorrow at 4.
Right. Thank both the IPA and of course DENREC for their leadership in getting that rolling for us. So that was a grant program that we were the fortunate beneficiaries of this year. So, any questions for Emery's report? Okay, great. And I think both of us, we both barely mentioned the idea of Night Out, which, Chief, I want to thank you and your staff for organizing. I think although it was a little bit lighter in attendance this year, I think the weatherman cooperated. I think it was cooler than it's ever been, and I think everyone had a good time. So thank you very much. And we want to thank DPH for being there to offer both COVID vaccination and for testing. So if there are no further questions or comments, we can then move on to item H1, which is unfinished business as presentation and possible action on an MOU with the Lewes Public Library to install the Lewes Library Garden Railroad exhibit, and an MOU with the Lewes Junction Railroad Bridge Association to install a railroad display on the railroad right-of-way at Adams Avenue. Glenn, I know you've been working on these MOUs, and
Sure, Mayor. So there are two projects that are happening in that area. This is one of them. It would be, so this MOU lays out an agreement between the library and the city for some improvements that would be between the trail and the library building itself. They include, and I'll read the list here, they include a 4-sided enclosure to screen utility equipment, 3-sided wall to screen solar inverters, refurbishments to the courtyard in the immediate vicinity, educational murals to the rear, northwest, and southwest sides of the enclosure, and artwork murals on the solar inverter screen wall. So the whole idea of this project, along with the other project that's happening, is to kind of highlight the railroad history that's in that area, so the murals will kind of be historical reference to that. So there's that project, and there's another project we're going to talk about in a minute. They all kind of flow together nicely on that side of the building to kind kind of highlight this railroad history we have. The MOU here, the bottom line is that Shell Brothers is going to do most of the construction activity. The city has very little, if any, responsibilities with regard to removal of it. If the murals and the enclosures are ever removed, it's the library's responsibility to do that, and I think the library has an agreement with Shell Brothers ultimately for that to happen. I think we've agreed to do some mowing and things that we already do, but there's not anything new for the city under this MOU. Is very incremental. There's not any significant increase, but it does establish rights and responsibilities as far as these improvements go. And Hugh Leahy is here if anybody has questions for the library.
Thank you. Hugh, thank you for being here. Just a little bit of background. We did receive, we had asked the DELDOT for permission to do this since it's their right-of-way. And they had given us the permission to proceed, however, assigning us the responsibility for the maintenance and removal should this fall apart or no longer be of interest. And so what this MOU and the other MOU does is takes that MOU that we have with DELDOT to take over this area and use it for this display, as Glenn's very accurately described, and assigns that responsibility of maintenance and removal to the various entities who will be doing the installation. So
in the agreements, DELDOT's looking to the city and the city's looking to the library in this case.
Yeah. Hugh, do you have anything you want to add since you're here for the library?
No, you summed it up very accurately. The intention of the MOU is to shield the city from any liability or any cost. And of course, DELDOT doesn't want to have any cost or liability either, and has passed that to you. So the intention is to shield you from any cost or liability, and that's what it does. And of course, we think it's a great enhancement to that part of town, and you've all heard that that's where the Lewes Junction station was, and so not only is railroading a historic element of the town, it happens to be a historic element right exactly there. So it's very fitting, I think, that this be done, and should be quite an enhancement, we're thinking.
Great, thank you, Hugh.
Thanks.
And the structure that's planned is a replica of the station in miniature, which will not be a functional replica. It actually will enclose your generators.
And it's a fence.
And a fence, yep, okay. Any questions on the MOU from
The other thing I noticed, it's just the spelling of the Shell's name is correct with a C in some spots, and in some it's without the C.
Is that right? Yeah. Like a seashell?
Yeah.
We can click that.
In fact, yeah. I think the limited warranty was one of the errors under the
Number 13, actually, it's on the draft MOUs that you provided.
the ones that we got in hard copy tonight.
Okay.
But that's just typo.
Okay, all right,
We will fix that.
all right.
Should just be a motion to authorize the mayor to, if you're ready.
I have one question, actually. The documents that we received at the start of the meeting, how do they fit into what was actually included in our packet?
So the main MOU has an exhibits to it, and those would be exhibits to the main MOU.
Okay, so these are exhibits?
Right.
Got it, thank you.
Other than the typos that Andrew noted, are there any other questions or comments?
This is just now for the library's piece right now, right?
That's all we are.
I'll make a motion to approve the MOU for the library.
Okay.
I'll second that.
Thank you, Carol.
You're welcome.
Motion is second. Hearing any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Congratulations, Hugh. Look forward to seeing that project move forward.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Shell Brothers has been very generous.
Yeah, and patient.
Yeah, and I think it'll be a wonderful display, and will really demonstrate for anyone who is visiting or who may not have been here for very long the significance of the railroad. So, thank you. Then moving on to item H2 is presentation of possible action on an MOU with DELDOT for the installation of the Lewes Library Garden Railroad exhibit. And this actually is the railroad, the Lewes Junction Railroad MOU that exists. And
Is the actual trains?
this is the actual installation of an engine, a passenger car,
This is second.
and a caboose,
Okay.
which is And in this process, they intend to, the track, this 200-foot section of track that we maintained or that we retained, that we didn't have them remove, this group then intends to move it 200 feet, or move it 8 feet over, closer, giving more space for the garden exhibit.
So the tracks run closer to the Rollins Center and a little bit further from the exhibit. But I think it's going to be neat. It's going to be neat to see these things go together. I'm particularly excited about this one because about a year ago, son number 1 decided while riding on the trail that he should ride down the railroad tracks. Now son number 2 does it. So if it's 8 feet over and some rail cars on there, we won't have sons riding on the railroad tracks. So
Very good. All right.
I had a question around the removal piece. That mentions shall provide a bond or security in the form of that's acceptable to the city and sufficient. At what point do we determine what's acceptable and sufficient?
I think
they'll have to present something to us, and it'll go through the city manager's office. And they're different, as you know, there's different forms of security, and it's just got to be something that we feel confident we'll be able to recoup the removal expenses if the city, for some reason, would have to do it.
one of the things that we did when we approved the placement of the bridge was required a bond in the amount of $250,000, I believe.
Yeah.
And I think that this particular installation, since it's being done by the same group, might be able to be covered under the same bond if possible.
That's right. They're looking into different ways that would be cost-effective for them but still meet our needs, and that just hasn't been finalized yet. But I think if we have it in here that it has to be something that's acceptable to the city, we'll have a chance to review it. If you all are comfortable with the city manager working with me.
Prior to them being placed on the site.
Absolutely.
Yes.
That has to be done. And that was the same thing with the bridge. They're not getting the bond right away, but as the bridge moves, which now we've been informed probably will not start moving until January.
It's just a security blanket, basically.
Exactly, yeah. Okay, did you have other questions? Okay. Any other questions?
The only other question I will raise is one about in Section 9 notices, about the names of the addresses
yes.
and so forth. Is that, it lists the mayor and also Randy Voth as the president.
Right.
And are we going to, and also I thought we had as a policy that these kinds of documents would flow through the city manager and be signed by city manager as well. Am I mistaken by that?
That is the default that was adopted under the code. You are able to authorize the mayor to sign these sorts of things, though. It is set up right now for the mayor's signature, but you're right. If it was just a city document, that the default is the city manager at this point. But if a document comes before you and has the mayor's name on it, you can authorize the mayor to sign.
Okay.
Right. All right. Any other questions?
Christine,
We have,
Oh, we have a question from
Yeah,
the audience, okay?
David, what's his last? Pardon me? Yes, David Ludlow
Okay.
has his hand up, so
Didn't see you, we didn't. Okay, great. David. Can you hear us, David? If you can't hear us, you can type your question or comment into the chat.
you should be able to unmute David.
Can you hear me now? I'm sorry.
Yeah, we got you.
Okay. My name is David Ludlow. I'm with the Lewes Junction Railroad and Bridge Association. My first question is the MOU that we have on the desk, Glenn, is this the one that you and Andrea finished at 2:54 today?
It is the one that we finished at 2:54 today, yeah. I should mention, the only change that was made, and I sent it all out to you, but there's a provision that says if the corridor is ever taken over again and used as an active railway, that the Junction Railroad, or the Lewes Junction Railroad and Bridge Association would be responsible for removal. They added a provision just to make clear that if some other federal agency has an obligation to remove it because they've made it now an active railway again, that other agency would have the responsibility and not them. That's the only change.
That's good.
Yeah, that's that text you sent.
Right.
Right.
Thank you, David. And by the way, they've been great to work with. They've been very prompt and reactive.
Yeah, David and the whole crew have been great to work with.
It's early.
Okay.
Yes, thank you very much, Glenn. If there's any questions for me, regarding other issues or other concerns or, just other inquiries, I'm more than happy to answer them right now.
I don't have any, thank you, though.
Any questions from the table for David?
No, none at this time.
Okay. I think you're okay, David.
Okay, yeah, thank you all for having me.
Thank you very much. So, do we have a motion to approve this MOU?
I'll make a motion to approve the MOU.
Okay. Carolyn, thank you very much. With a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? David, thank you very much. Robert Kennedy is sitting in the audience. Thank you very much for being here. We look forward to seeing this installation occur. Thank you very much. Now we just have to get the engine and the passenger car and the caboose rehabilitated, because this does not allow you to do any rehabilitation on site. It all has to be done before it's brought here. I know that was a concern early on, that we weren't going to be doing that, so thank you. Okay, so with that, I think we're ready to move on to new business, which is presentation and possible action on a resolution to set a public hearing for the final subdivision of Old Town at White Pond, formerly known as White Pond Meadow, located off of Freeman Highway and Monroe Avenue, as Sussex County Tax Map 335-8.00-46.00. Janelle, you have anything you want to comment about this? We're just setting a public hearing tonight.
Not unless you have any questions. It's just to set a public hearing. And I know there will be a lot of questions probably at the public hearing and afterwards, and I'm happy to answer those then.
And I just want to clarify, because Mr. Ritzer brought it up earlier today. There was a slight error in the packet where it said 68% open space in one place and 28% in another, and it is 28%, and that has been corrected and is in the online packet now.
Okay. Okay. All right, so we floated some dates, right?
Yes.
And what date did you determine?
I want to say you were looking at
30th?
Yeah, August 30th at 6 o'clock.
Okay, and that we will most likely do at the Rollins Center,
Okay, thank you.
so we can accommodate as many people as possible. We'll still be doing it by Zoom, but...
Yes, it will be fully hybrid, but we can accommodate a lot more people in person in the Rollins Center, so.
Okay.
Yes, 6 p.m.
Kim? Okay, I need a motion to set that public hearing.
So moved.
Thank you, Tim. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Andrew. A motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Moving then on to item I2 is presentation of possible action regarding scheduling a public hearing regarding CZ-2.21 lands of the Lewes Middle School for a change of zone from CFE, Community Facilities Educational Zone, to GC, General Commercial Zone, for Sussex County Tax Map 335-8.11-30.00, portion thereof. This is lands that front on Savannah Road, adjacent to the middle school, and I think we need to set a public hearing here. Do you have any comments you want to make at this point, Janelle?
Not at this time. And again, we're talking about 4,000 square feet of land.
Right.
So it's very minor due to an encroachment.
Right.
That's the garage.
Correct.
Correct.
The old Hudson.
The old Hudson gas station.
Right, gotcha.
Okay,
Is this
so,
going to be the same night?
I beg your pardon?
We'll hold those on the same night?
We could.
That is what my understanding was.
Yeah, that'd be great.
So the idea is that we would hold the rezoning one first, because that will be pretty quick.
Right.
Because we don't anticipate a lot of public comment. So if we do the rezoning first, then that gives us plenty of time for the other.
Right.
Fine by me.
So it still starts at 6, but...
Yes.
Correct.
Got it.
Right, okay.
So this one will start the hearing, and the hearing on the Old Town, or the Whites Meadow project will occur immediately following. Okay, so we need a motion to set this particular hearing at 6 o'clock.
So moved.
Second. Thank you, Khalil. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, any opposed? Motion carries. Moving then on to I3, is presentation of possible action on amendments to the city's policy creating the Public Arts Committee. Public Arts Committee, as you'll recall, was a committee that was established a few years ago to deal with the placement of art objects on city lands. There is another committee known as the Art and Bloom Committee, which deals with art objects that may be placed on privately owned lands, and we have illustrations of both. Our Public Arts Committee has been meeting regularly. They are the folks who brought us the temporary exhibit down by Overfalls, and also the exhibit that's currently in George H.P. Smith Park, as well as the mural that's been painted on the side of the utility building off of backing up to the trail. So there seemed to be some areas of this policy and setup that needed to be clarified, and I believe that Cliff Diver, the chair of the committee, met with city manager, myself, and others to work out some language that would address some of those concerns. Most importantly, I think is what this does is it establishes, much like we have for H Park, the idea that there could be a chair and staff review of relatively minor items that might not need the whole approval process or go through the whole vetting process. But it also establishes a clear application process so that it's very transparent what someone is doing before it gets to the committee and how it goes. Anne-Marie, you want to comment further?
Just the question had come up about the two separate attachments to the agenda. So just so people understand, the first one that says for August 21 shows the strike through, so that shows where language is coming out, not just where language is being added. And then the second attachment is a cleaner version that doesn't show the strike-through text. So if you're trying to figure out where the changes are, it's that first attachment that gives the comprehensive changes.
Correct.
Oh, okay.
Any questions or comments? Anna, you were part of this discussion as well.
I think you articulated it well. I think one of the reasons was to just streamline process where there were potentially time-sensitive but yet minor installations, and also, frankly, to start empowering our staff. And Janet's a capable person in her role, so I think it doesn't eliminate the public process of reviewing the work. It allows the committee to do that and then empowers the staff. And if the staff doesn't feel comfortable, they can still elevate it to council. So gives them that ability.
Okay.
Well, it really should be under their purview, to be honest with you.
Yeah. Okay. Great. All right. Is there a motion from the table?
I'll make a motion to approve the amendments to the Public Arts Committee bylaws.
Okay. Is there a second?
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you, Carol. The motion is second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. Moving then on to item I4 is presentation and possible action regarding the clarification of Municipal Code of Lewes as it relates to parking at the corner of Bayview Avenue and East Market and Bay Avenue. This is an intersection that where Market and Bayview and Bay often get confused as to which street we're talking about. And Mr. Hackett, who lives at the corner, is with us tonight. Thank you for joining us this evening. And Charlie O'Donnell, the city engineer, has looked at this. And Mr. Hackett, would you have, we've read the information that you provided. I appreciate your sending that. Would you like to comment at this point, or would you like to wait and comment later? If you would like to comment, please come up to the podium.
This revolves around my parking place in front of my cottage on the corner of Bay and Market.
If we can you just speak into the mic, please?
Just come up a little further.
Please. We would greatly appreciate it.
It revolves around a parking space that's been in front of my cottage. It's 202 Bay Avenue, which fronts on Market Street, and it's on the corner of Market and Bay Avenue. And we have been parking in front of the cottage for 43 years as we bought the property back in 1978. And on May 28th, of this year, yellow lines were placed in front of the cottage, marking it as a no parking area. And then we got a ticket after that for parking there. There is no town ordinance which prohibits parking in front of the cottage on Market Street. In fact, there's no ordinance which prohibits parking on Market Street anywhere. And I think this arose from either a misinterpretation of an ordinance that was enacted in August of 2009, which dealt with parking along what's called a blind curve, which is at the end of Market Street, where Bayview Avenue turns right. Bayview Avenue runs along the beach, and Market Street intersects at the beach with Bayview Avenue. And what that ordinance said was that there would be no parking on the south side of Bayview Avenue from a distance of 35 feet from Market Street. And it's now cross-hatched off to the area that was where there would be no parking. It also amended the ordinance to regarding parking on the north side of Bayview Avenue. Now, that had always been prohibited for I don't know how long, because Bayview Avenue is as wide as the original Bay Avenue, which it is part of.
Right.
But the dudes overtaking it, like not as bad as they overtook the rest of Bay Avenue, the original Bay Avenue, which is in front of my house on the beach side.
Still buried there.
Still buried there. Well, they never really paved it.
Right.
But there is a sidewalk that runs alongside.
I've seen it in some places.
Yeah, there's a sidewalk that runs alongside of it. And the water mains ran along Bay Avenue until they moved them to the new Bay Avenue.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So, the city manager had been asked by the, I think it's ad hoc Lewes Beach Parking Committee, I think that's the name of it, to step up the enforcement of the ordinances, the parking ordinances, and she determined that Bayview Avenue actually started at the intersection of Bay and Market, and directed the placement of yellow lines in front of my cottage, and also the rest of the way down Market Street as it goes towards the beach. I'm not concerned about that part. I'm just concerned about the part in front of my cottage. And like I said, we've been parking there for 43 years, and it's the only parking available for the cottage. And what that does, and I don't think the city manager intended this at the time she directed the placement of the yellow lines, but what that does is it invokes a state statute which says that there's no parking next to yellow lines. So there wasn't an ordinance prohibiting parking there, but when the state statute was invoked, now there's no parking. So what I want to achieve by tonight is I want that to be eliminated.
Got it.
So that I can return to parking there. Now, I submitted a rather lengthy memorandum.
We received it on Friday. Thank you very much.
Put you all asleep, I'm sure. It helped your insomnia.
Good weekend reading.
Yeah, it kept your insomnia quite a bit. And I also gave you an old copy of the plot of Lewes Beach to show you where Bayview Avenue really is. And it doesn't make a turn there at Market Street. And a bunch of other stuff. But in any event,
it's all here.
I hope I made it clear what my point was, and also addressed the possibility that there might be some safety concerns, because the town asked for an engineering analysis, which you were kind enough to give me a copy of. And there were some possible safety concerns addressed in that. And the only thing I have to say about that is that there haven't been any safety concerns for 48 years, or 43 years. So history shows that there are no safety issues there. There's quite a lot of pavement in front of the cottage because of the configuration of Bay Avenue coming, almost ending across from the cottage because there's a kind of an angle there.
Right.
And also, across from the cottage is the parking lot for the Breakwater House condominium.
Correct.
And so there's a lot of paved area. So any emergency vehicles that need to get through there have no problem whatsoever. Now, they might have a little problem at the end of the street,
Right.
but not there.
Yeah.
And so, bottom line is, as far as safety is concerned, if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Okay. Great.
Okay?
Thank you very much.
Right.
Appreciate you taking time to be here tonight.
Right.
Thank you. Okay. Charlie, you have any comments in reference to this at all? I know you provided a report.
I think what I provided was just, the lay of the land, really, the right-of-way width and what I found to be the distance between the edge of the right-of-way and the paving. And, I mean, there's some bushes and trees that are on that side. One in particular that sort of limits how far you can get off. I parked my little Volkswagen, and I was enough off of that tree to be able to open my door, but I was just on the edge. I wasn't quite on the pavement. So, I mean, you can fit a car in there, and sort of what Mr. Hacken was talking about, that wouldn't be a problem safety-wise for the cars backing out from the Breakwater condo parking spaces. But if a car does straddle into the paving area, then that is a problem, I think. So, I mean, I just presented what I
Appreciate it.
out there. Yeah.
Thank you. I appreciate you taking time to do that, Charlie. And will you have any comments?
I think the big thing, I guess, if you can pull up the Sussex County tab there seems to be a lack of clarity or some inconsistency in where Market Street ends and Bayview begins.
Ellen Ray, could you pull the lights down a little bit so we can people can see
The
it?
clarity on these projectors gets worse every year. But
Oh, my eyes.
So this is the Sussex County map, and it shows that being Bayview once you cross over. There are other maps, and Google Maps shows the same as this. There are other maps that show the opposite.
Right.
So, and then the other thing, if you could go to, in the packet, where I've got hold on, you're right there. It does actually have from Market Street to Savannah on the north side in the code. So again, it all kind of hinges on where is Market versus Bayview. So, I've talked to several of you about this, and my thought is we should probably somehow, I don't know if it's through ordinance, through adopting something for maybe an ordinance that makes it clear to change the map, or a resolution to make it clear where Bayview starts, whether it starts at that curve or at the intersection.
There's a street sign on the
Right.
bay side of...
Right. That says Market.
It says Market. And
Right.
I feel like there's a street sign that's missing probably the top part of the street sign that's actually on the beach.
It says Bayview.
So that
It should say.
So there's inconsistency kind of all around when you look at things. So from my perspective, I think if it's determined that this is an acceptable location for on-street parking, that's fine, but we need to make it somehow clear so that future parking enforcement officers, future police department, so that we know.
I think that's what we need to do. The question is not, is this on? Maybe now? So I don't think the question really is where does Bayview start, because it's your streets, you can have parking or not parking wherever you want to. So ultimately, you can determine whether you want parking there or not. But if you want to clarify it, we'd probably have them adopt a resolution or something that gets recorded in the land records so that it's clear going forward that the name of the street is whatever the name is.
And then we would make sure that we get it to, DelDOT, to the county, to Google, so that the mapping is consistent, because I've seen maps that show a variety of things.
Well, what controls here, as far as the streets, is the original plot
Of your house.
of Lewes Beach.
Right.
Yeah. And that's part of an original plot of the lands of the city, really. It's just a small portion of it. And that plot shows they have 3 names for Bay Avenue back there.
Great. They have very Lewis thing.
They have Bay Avenue.
It's even easier.
Yeah, they have Bay Avenue, they have Bay Space View Avenue, and then they have Bayview Avenue.
Right.
But the point I'm trying to make is that Bayview Avenue runs, for our purposes, runs from Savannah west to where it stops at the dune.
Right.
And that dune is in front of my house,
Right.
but it stops at that dune.
Right.
So that's Bayview Avenue. And then Market intersects
Actually,
Bayview
dead ends
Avenue
right there.
Yeah, dead ends right there.
Right.
So,
Yeah. And I think if we looked at a historical map, we would find that what we're now calling Bayview Avenue actually extended across in front of your house.
oh yeah, it's extended all the way down the beach.
Exactly, down to Children's Beach House, basically.
I think so.
Yeah. So I think your point's very well made, and
So I think, I don't know why Google Maps has Bayview, and you gotta expand that to like 80% before Bayview kind of runs down Market Street.
Right.
And I didn't notice on the county map, I didn't notice where it said Bayview Avenue went down Market Street, but, it's possible.
Right.
But I think we have to rely upon history here and the plots of Lewes and Lewes Beach to control. Now, I really don't see how law enforcement could get confused about that, really. I mean,
yeah. Well, I think once the yellow lines were down, it was easy to make that
No,
decision.
the yellow lines were put down after the ticket was issued,
Okay.
because when both parking enforcement and the police department looked at it, they determined it to be a no parking area.
All right.
So the yellow line came after that because.
well, there was two.
And there was a sign placed on these, I think there was a stop sign there, or some kind of a pole there.
There's a separate pool.
There was a sign.
Existing pole, and they put in a
Right.
parking sign.
Right.
Yes.
Right, but the determination was made before the lines went down.
Well, there were 2 tickets. One was on Thursday, May 27th, before the lines went down.
Right.
And then there was one on Sunday, May 30th, after the lines came down. The first one was rescinded because there wasn't any yellow lines there, and there wasn't any ordinance which forbade parking there. I just, it kind of boggles my mind that this even happened. But I can understand, the city manager's trying to do her job.
Right.
And, she thought, you concluded that Bayview started at the intersection of Bay Avenue and Market Street.
Okay.
And so,
Okay.
here we are.
All right, well, I think we can figure this one out for you, so thank you.
Okay. I just want my parking space back.
Got it.
That's all I care about. I don't care about clarifying anything.
All right, well, we'll get it clarified, and then hopefully you'll have your parking space.
All right.
Okay. So council's discussion at the table?
I'm just trying to frame the motion.
Yeah. The motion is to direct Glenn to provide the direction where Bay Avenue, where the market terminates at Bayview.
I mean, yeah, I could look at plots and try to come up with some determination, but I think really the larger question is a policy question for city council. Do you want to have public parking at that area of, whether it be Bayview or Market, do you want to have public parking there?
I think it's specific with, I think what Mr. Hackett's asking for is simply the single spot there that's, right, because it's also narrows out and it gets wider where he's talking about. So the point about being able to get through there, he's only talking about the allowance for the one spot. The other two, I think he appreciates that it's potentially less safe. So he's not.
But he's also not asking for himself, he's asking for...
It's just a public spot.
It's just a public, it's not an individual's grave.
So
That's right.
the only reason that it's important to determine where Bayview versus Market Street, changes over is because it's the code, right, it's the code that specifies, and if you read the north side of Bayview and see Bayview is starting at Market, then you come up with a very different geography.
We could just codify the space beside Mr. Hackett's house.
There you go.
Well, I think it would make sense. I think it would make sense to...
Can you come to the podium just so we can, we have people participating remotely.
Okay. It makes sense to enact an ordinance prohibiting parking from Bayview to north of my driveway.
Right.
Because it is narrow there.
Yes,
Yes, so different.
And also the roadway narrows there.
correct, as Andrew was just saying.
I've seen people have parked there.
Right.
And I've seen how it could be a problem, particularly for emergency vehicles, to get around that corner when people park there.
Right.
So it would make sense to enact an ordinance prohibiting parking there. But where I am, there are no safety issues, and
I think the simplest thing to do to ensure it's just for, until we codify it, is to just remove the no parking sign there.
Remove the no parking sign, but also obliterate the yellow lines.
Correct.
The yellow lines are gone.
They are gone now.
They were kind of done in
They're pretty much
the
gone.
gravel area.
Yeah, so
They weren't on the pavement.
You can't see them.
And
I was over there this morning,
They
and
were
they're-
gone within a few days,
Yeah,
actually.
Right.
so I think that's okay.
when my house guests parked there on Sunday, they were pretty much gone.
Okay.
You could.
Well, after the rain the other day, you would be, yeah. Okay. But I think as you look, Glenn, as you look at the original plotting of Bayview Avenue, you'll see that Bay really ran on, as Mr. Hackett was saying earlier, that it ran on out. So Market Street always dead-ended into Bay Avenue.
I have no question. So the original plots don't show East Market going past Bay Avenue and extending all the way down to what was Bayview that went straight along the beach.
Yeah. But I'm sure there are historical maps, but probably she seems to be able to find everything in the archives. She can probably pull that up for you.
Well, I did send the council a copy of the original plot, part that's where my property is located.
Absolutely, it was right here.
Yeah, and so, take a look at that.
Okay.
Plot book 2, page 5, I think.
Yep. Book 2, page 5. That's going back a ways.
It is. I mean, it's the original subdivision plot, I guess you'd say, for the town. And
Or maybe we refer to it as the area south of the driveway at 202 Bay Avenue.
north.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
North.
No, it is.
Nothing's due north and due south here, so you kind of got
I
to...
think it's too confusing to put directional things in. I think we have to do with landmarks.
Well, wait a minute, Andrew, I would like to ask you a question. Are you trying to describe the actual space that we are going to...
So he's not asking about this, he's saying just the spot in front of the yucca,
I understand, right.
Or maybe we just reference the yuccas.
So if that's the direction you want to go.
Spot in the corner of Market and Bay.
If that's the direction you want to go.
Yes.
I think that, basically, if you were to direct staff and me to work together to bring an ordinance back that's appropriate.
Absolutely.
And then ask them not to enforce anything against that spot while we're trying to get an ordinance in place.
Right, and I think by starting to stop the enforcement is to remove the no parking sign that's presently on the post.
Right.
Yeah, it's a brand new sign.
The new part.
Yeah, the new.
Yeah, that's what I'm
Not the
saying.
one that's been there.
It was just put up this season.
Yeah.
Right.
There is a parking sign at the end of Market.
That's right.
Down,
Correct.
you know,
At
just
Bayview.
Just at
at
Bayview.
Bayview.
Correct.
Right.
Or where that one?
That's not
Yeah, that's,
the
I
issue.
guess that refers to the parking on the north side of
Exactly.
Bayview.
Bayview.
Right.
Yeah, it's not mine, but.
Right, okay.
The new one came a couple weeks after the yellow lines were put there, and it came up.
Oh, I see, that was the sequence. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, that was not clear to me before.
Okay.
All right, so Andrew,
I mean, you want to give it a shot? No. I'll make a motion to direct staff to stop the enforcement of the no parking on the single spot in front of 202
I did submit
Bay
a
Avenue.
motion,
yes, you did.
Yes.
which is somewhat what you're,
Yeah, you're getting there.
Almost there.
You're almost there.
But I think, yeah, okay. Where's the?
Well, I thought you had a question that you brought before us, but then I didn't see you. You'd spelled out a motion for us, David?
The resolution?
There's a resolution right here,
Yeah.
right after the map.
at the end of the,
It's page
All you have to do is read it.
page 23 or 28,
Right.
right?
Where am I here?
I've got it. Page 98.
Okay.
Oh, you go to page 98, he's on page, you're on page 98?
That's the wrong one then.
Yeah, okay, so I'll make a motion that the city manager and department will cease from all parking code enforcement on Market Street in front of 202 Bay Avenue. Has this already taken place?
The administrative actions, yeah.
Yeah, the administrative actions hereby rescinded. The city manager is hereby directed to cause the removal of the yellow lines and the no parking sign placed on the roadway, the shoulder of Market Street in front of 202 Bay Avenue.
Right.
And that we, that we direct the city manager and the city solicitor to create a resolution affecting that.
Is that a motion?
To adopt a resolution.
Is that a motion, Andrew?
Yeah, I'll make that motion.
Is that a motion? Someone want to second it? 'Cause
Absolutely.
I'll second it.
I'm going to make a comment, please.
Okay.
And this would be a friendly amendment, if you don't mind. I think details matter, and especially when we are talking about street names and so forth. And in this particular area of Lewes, Market Street is not Market Street, it's East Market Street. So I think this resolution should include the descriptive East Market. Okay? And I'm also
that didn't include is because all the signs say Market.
I understand.
Yeah, they did.
Oh, you're right, it is East Market
The
Street.
one right on the corner.
I know, but at the other end of, down by Cedar, I believe it says East Market. So we're not consistent, it's Lewes. And the other thing I was going to suggest is that we describe, I'm reading D3 in his resolution. I think a better description is, instead of in front of 202 Bay Avenue, that we describe it as alongside 202 Bay Avenue, because it's the East Market side of 202 Bay Avenue that we are discussing.
That says Market, not East Market.
Yes.
Right.
Well, the reason why I say the front of 202 is that the front door, the front door of the entrance is on Market Street. So it's actually the front.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I thought, was there today, and I was trying to figure out which way was your front door. I thought it was Market Street.
Yeah, the cottage, the little cottage.
Right.
Now, the main house, who knows where the front door is? I say it's on the beach.
Technically, it probably was.
Yeah, it was, yeah, back, I think they...
Is that the original building?
I think they lost the road in the late 40s.
I think you're right.
Yeah.
So Tim, you're suggesting put East Market and instead of in front of, just at the corner of 202?
Or along the side of 202 Bay Avenue.
One of the Market Streets, the East Market Street side.
East Market.
Right.
So it would read on-street parking on East Market Street. And instead of in front of 202, I would say along the side of 202.
I'm fine
Bay
with
Avenue.
that.
Okay. If that's acceptable.
Okay.
Yes, absolutely.
And we have okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Second.
And to be consistent, down in number 3, below the now therefore section, again, we need to pick up the reference to East Market. Let's be consistent in this document, please.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Right, so we have a motion.
So I got my parking back?
I think it was, who we vote? How did Terry get his sign back?
I'm going to go park there tomorrow.
I'm going to beat you to it.
You actually parked your bike there the other day.
Okay. All right, Janine, did you get the motion? I think did we work it through enough that you actually captured it? Okay, great. Okay, so we have a motion and a second?
We got a second off of Khalil already.
Yeah, I think so we have a motion and a second, so all in favor? Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Congratulations, you have your parking back.
Thank you.
Thank you for your patience, Mr. Hackett. I know you and I have been corresponding.
Maybe I could use it another 43 years.
Yeah, I hope so.
No more booklets. Thank
That'd be
you.
great. I thought that was a...
That was some report. Thank you.
It was.
Thanks a lot, Mr. Hackett. Appreciate your patience while we work through this.
Yes.
Okay. All right, so let's move on then to item I-6, which is presentation and possible action on the Lewes Waterfront Preserve Development.
Did we do
Development.
I-5?
I-5, excuse me. Oh, excuse me, I'm sorry, I jumped ahead. Presentation and possible action on the recommendation for the bid award of Phase 25 street project, which includes repaving Ship Carpenter Street and the addition of crosswalk at Cedar Street and Savannah Road. Charlie, you want to talk to us about this? We do have a bid that you're recommending approval on.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Bids were received and opened at 2 o'clock on August 3rd, last week. You received a copy of the bid opening results, bid tab, and the 3 bids that we received. We received 3 bids, one from Jerry's Inc. of Milford, George and Lynch Inc. of Dover, and Adel Construction of Newark. The lowest responsible total base bid with the contingent items was received from Jerry's Inc. in the amount of $163,404.05. Adel was $204,750. George and Lynch was $213,711 for reference. G&B went through the bid proposals, found them to be consistent. There were just minor arithmetic errors that sometimes occur, and we cleaned those up. So based on all that information, we recommend award to Jerry's Inc. in the amount of $163,404.05. Just a couple other things is that the city had budgeted nearly $99,000 for just Ship Carpenter Square. That part of this project came in at $109,000, and then we removed a couple of things from the Phase 24 project, including the ADA crosswalks and ADA ramps at Cedar Avenue and Savannah Road and the Tennessee Avenue extension. So that's the reason why it's more expensive, because those things have been added in. They would have been spent as part of the Phase 24, but we cut them out near the end of the project just to get that one done, if you recall. Right. So again, we recommend award to Jerry's in the amount of $163,404.05, and I'm willing to take any questions.
I just had a question. I'm sorry. The question was brought to me by a citizen just in regards to how, maybe you can just clarify for people how the algorithm, GMB's built-in algorithm that kind of scores the, so if you just want to, top level, talk the community through that program, and then where this one kind of netted out and why we're paving this as opposed to somewhere else. Maybe.
Yeah, we did it last year. The city went through a whole process of evaluating every one of their streets, and we did it with new technology, including laser imaging and laser technology that is able to say exactly the condition of a street. And what that does is, as we go through each street, it gives it a pavement condition index. So every street in Lewes, as of last summer, has a pavement condition index. I have a complete spreadsheet that has all that in there, and then I can query that spreadsheet on a lot of different things, mostly related to whatever council wants to do, because you can do your street maintenance project to keep your overall pavement condition index to a certain average, or you can do your street maintenance program such that certain number of streets don't get into what we call the failure category of less than a pavement condition index of 30. Obviously, what plays a big part every single year when we talk about doing maintenance is the budget monies available. So that's a key component of when I plug it in there, and then my spreadsheet will kick out. And what we did last year was a 5-year plan. So we actually have, this is just the first of a 5-year plan of street maintenance. So the strange thing was, in this particular year, it was just one street, Ship Carpenter Square. Next year, it's several streets, and then it's several streets from there on out.
And I want to add, if you recall, Charlie gave us several funding levels that, you know, if you do this, if you spend this much a year or that much. For this year, we built the 5-year plan based off of $135,000.
Total project, which includes engineering fees and construction.
Right. And that was because we're also working on the total reconstruction of Monroe Adams Railroad. And that's a really large project that doesn't figure into that. So what we did was, for the algorithm thing, the model.
Spreadsheet.
The spreadsheet. There you go. There's a big word for you. For the spreadsheet tool that we have, we put a lower amount to spend over the next 5 years, because for 2 to 3 year horizon, we're going to be working on these other projects.
Well, you took the Monroe project aside from that?
It's separate, and it's
Okay.
when you look at Monroe Railroad and the last bit of Adams that we have to do, we talked about breaking it over 2 years, and it's going to be near $1 million.
Right.
It's $1 million.
over $1 million.
Okay. Yeah, it's $1 million project. So,
Yes, right.
but we can't not do anything else while that's going on either.
Right.
So.
The other thing is that I think that early on, you thought, and based on your early assessment, before you started using this new tool, that we were going to have to completely rebuild Ship Carpenter Square. And because of what you learned through the utilization of the technology that we used last summer to do an assessment of all the streets, this project is nowhere near what it might have been under your original
It's a
thing.
mill and overlay, yeah.
But why
which
would you
is-
think you had to rebuild Ship Carpenter?
Just based on what my knowledge of what the section of the street was when it was built back in the 80s.
Okay.
That's, it's not a great section, but, you know, our technology says that we can mill and overlay it, so we're going to have a nice solid. And one thing is, it doesn't get a whole lot of traffic, so it doesn't have a whole lot of load on it.
Right.
You know, just for council's knowledge, like, we just completed Coleman Avenue and East 4th Street. Now I got to go into the spreadsheet and update those, because those pavement condition indexes have gone up to 98, 99, which is out of 100. So that's what we'll be doing to keep that up to date, so that every year when we query it, it'll be based on the present condition.
Charlie, I have a question for you. Do you have a recollection of what the index number was for Ship Carpenter Square off the top of your head?
It was less than 60. I think it was in the 40s.
Okay.
Yeah,
In
because
70s where we want to be, yeah?
Yeah, right around 70. We have an average right now of 67, I think it was, citywide. That's, you know, when you take the whole, and sort of the rule of thumb is to keep that average above 65.
Okay.
But definitely don't let streets get below 40, because then they do fall into like complete rebuild areas.
Which is where we are pretty much with Monroe.
Yeah, so just a couple things on that is that this spreadsheet algorithm that we're talking about it just spits out streets that are going to be maintained, mostly with mill and overlay, sometimes with porous asphalt. When we have to do a complete rebuild like Monroe Avenue, like we might have to do on not Pilottown Road, Ocean View Boulevard, those are separate capital projects that don't fall into this algorithm spreadsheet analysis, because those are one-off, I like to call them one-off rebuild projects. You don't have many of those left, because we've rebuilt so many of the roads over the last 25 years.
Well, this kind of work that we're doing for Ship Carpenter Square is actually wouldn't that be more of a maintenance project rather than considered a capital project? I mean, shouldn't that be the distinction that we draw here?
You know, I guess you could say that, but at $100,000, I think it's, more than just maintenance. But that's just my...
It's capital maintenance.
Yeah,
I mean,
capital maintenance.
it's kind of like if you compared it to a building, a roof replacement is capital maintenance, but it still falls under the category of a capital project.
Yeah. One of the things we've talked about over the years is the idea of street breaks once you do these kinds of projects. And I know we're working on a street break situation. I think perhaps we should make sure that we notify all the property owners in Ship Carpenter Square that we're going to do this. So if they
That's a
have
good
any
idea.
anticipated need to put in another water main for an irrigation system or do anything like that, that they get it done prior to us doing this project.
Let's make sure we notify Chesapeake as well.
Yeah.
Probably should have done that already.
Well, Chesapeake,
They're already on 4th
they're on
Street.
4th Street, so they're serving from the other side.
Some of the houses are already being served.
Virtually.
I mean, we're looking to start this project if council agrees to the award, soon after Labor Day.
Right, but we have time to get a letter out to the
Yeah,
residents.
we can get a letter out on the services part of it, yeah.
Okay.
I have another question. First of all, I appreciate the effort that you've done here, and I appreciate all this information that you've made available to us.
Yes.
The experience, the most recent experience that we've had with the job on Coleman, on 4th, was what I would describe painful. And I would like to make sure that we save our citizens from that kind of experience in this community. Do we have any assurances that this contractor, in fact, the one that you're suggesting, is capable of meeting our expectations?
Do you have any experience with them?
Yes.
Yeah, they did Phase 23, street improvements, and they've done other projects in the past. Yeah, I mean, they're capable of doing the job.
But they did not do the other one, correct?
No.
They did not do it.
And this is less complicated because there's no utilities as part of it.
Yeah,
So I think part of, not that there weren't issues with the contractor, but the water main replacement, the addition of new sewer services, lining the sewer main, all of those things added a level of complexity to the Coleman Avenue project.
Plus the stormwater management.
Right, but those were all elements that the contractor bid on at the time.
Oh,
Right,
absolutely.
So
And
The scope
there's
of
no
work is very
DELETIONS
different.
involvement in the
Sure.
Ship Carpenter Square thing, which,
sure.
DELDOT will not be involved in this
DELDOT
project.
had a lot to do
well,
with
DELETIONS will be involved in the Cedar
Cedar,
Savannah
yes, but not the-
portion, but not the bulk of the
Correct,
project.
and that Cedar Savannah crosswalk thing was actually, as you said, was actually part of the Coleman thing that was pulled back from the
Yeah, we already have a permit from DELDOT for that.
And, okay, all right, but you do have experience with this vendor, right? And-
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Charlie. All right, so I think Anne Marie, we can get a letter out to the residents. Austin, maybe you can get a letter out.
Well, we're going to, one of the things that we committed to the residents is that we would have a meeting with the residents before we begin construction, so.
Yeah, but I think this letter needs to go out sort of,
Yeah,
it's too late if we wait till we
I
have.
want to do that in a hurry then.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Charlie, how long does this contractor expect for this job to take?
It's a 75-day contract. I mean, the thing you have to understand is that we have a pre-construction meeting and we provide that, we all agree to a notice to proceed date. But at that point, they're getting what we call shop drawing submissions into GMB. We're getting the agreement signed, the certificate of insurance. So there's some paperwork time at the front end. The actual on-site time, it's going to be around 60 days probably.
Months.
Wow.
And that includes the whole project, not just Ship Carpenter Square. All of it. The Savannah Road part of it and Tennessee Avenue.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Is there a motion to approve this bid as recommended by GMB?
Make a motion to approve the bid.
I'll second it.
The motion is second, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. I think we can move on to item I6, is presentation of possible action, Lewes Waterfront Preserve Development Agreement. I think this is, you've had a chance to look at this, Janelle, and you want to comment on it at all? It's pretty straightforward.
Yeah, I don't have any comments regarding the development agreement.
There's a couple of spots in there that references Tower Hill.
Yeah, I saw that as well.
So,
References Tower Hill?
so it is, I mean, I guess, Austin, you guys have already reviewed this, and the infrastructure is kind of tied together for the two of those. Is that
No.
the reason for the reference?
I believe in this agreement.
Can you come up? Sorry. For our home viewers.
So I believe in this agreement, it states that if the time schedule for the Tower Hill project doesn't meet the time schedule for Waterfront Preserve, that Waterfront Preserve has the ability to take on that infrastructure to extend service to them.
Right.
Okay.
Janelle, have you had a chance to read through this agreement, and is it satisfactory?
I can comment on that. So this agreement's pretty typical of what we do for developer agreements. It's more, in my view, it's more a BPW agreement than a city agreement. The city issues are addressed at Section 3 of the agreement. It's like a page and a half.
Right.
And it's just ensuring that streets that are going to be dedicated to us and those sorts of things are all done to city standards.
Right.
And there's some bonding requirements in there. But the majority of this is infrastructure stuff that BPW is mostly concerned about. The BPW attorney prepares the document. I pretty much review the city sections, and then, I think, Austin, have you guys, has the BPW already? They've already acted on and approved it. So it's, our really involvement in this agreement is much smaller than BPW's.
Right.
And in this one, if there's something out of the ordinary, you find it in Section 3. This is a very typical Section 3.
So do I understand from your description, Austin, has the BPW entered into a separate, no?
Same agreement.
It's the same agreement?
It's all,
Okay.
it's
All
jointly
right.
signed.
Okay. Thank you. Just wanted to make sure that I understood that.
All right. Do we have a motion to accept this developer's agreement?
I'll make a motion that we accept the development agreement as submitted.
Okay. Is there a second?
A second.
Okay, we have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. Moving then on to I-7, which is presentation of possible action on a request for a beach bonfire business at Beach 1 and 2. As you'll recall, we have a current relationship with Quest, and I see Matt Carter's here from Quest, for him to provide some services at Roosevelt Inlet, although he has his business elsewhere in town. And this now is a separate request from Cassidy Gallo to establish a business to offer bonfires at Beach 1 and 2. And this was discussed at Parks and Rec, and it was, after a lengthy discussion, it was approved by Parks and Rec. The concept was approved by Parks and Rec. Subsequent to that, we have received a petition from the Lewes Beach Civic Association asking us to forego the consideration of this license as it would further develop the commercialization of the beach. I think we gave Matt a conditional permit at the first year. We came back at the end of the year, and we awarded you a 2-year contract to go forward with this season and into the season of 22. And so now, this is a request that we've received independent of Matt, and it's for us to discuss. Obviously, many of the residents, I think we have about 60 signatories on this petition that we received on Friday.
If I may.
Yes, please.
We have a 2-year contract right now with Quest, and the reason for that is we're trying to get a feel for whether or not this is something we really want to do, right?
Right.
But wouldn't it make sense for us to see how that pans out before we venture forth in taking on anything else? And then at the end of that, too, we have a public hearing, making a decision on whether or not we should move forward on what we're going to do at the beach. I mean, I just don't see at this time where we should be taking anything else on.
I think there's a lot, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I think there's a lot of validity in what Carolyn's saying. Excuse me, I got something caught in my throat. I could have had some water. Once again, I forgot to bring water. But Yeah, I think what Carolyn says makes a lot of sense. And I also think what the Lewes Beach Civic Association is mentioning makes a lot of sense. I think what they're more looking for is a plan for the future.
Correct.
You know, and what that means is, are we going to have an open bid process, an RFP, which I think makes a lot of sense down the road because it allows us to kind of specify exactly the kind of services that we think should be provided, and so we can tailor that.
And it allows people's input.
And it allows people's input, and in that way, and I think we should only have one vendor. I don't think we need multiple vendors there. And I was looking around, I don't know Cassidy Gallo, but is she here?
She's not here this evening.
No.
Cassie Gallo is a young woman from Greenwood who is obviously starting in a startup business. She's apparently providing this service in other communities up and down the beach.
Gotcha.
And I think Rehoboth does not have a sole concession, is that correct? They have one sole concession, and I'm aware that, and you and I spoke earlier this afternoon, that Bethany does have an RFP process where it is awarded, I believe, on a 3-year basis. So that is something that we could consider going forward if we wanted to continue it.
Kay Carnahan has her hand up if you want to.
Kay is our beach commissioner from Parks and Rec. Kay, please unmute yourself and speak. And while you're doing that, Christine, are we 22 members? Is that what I'm seeing? 20 members of the public?
Yeah.
Good evening, everyone.
21 now? Okay.
Hi, Kay.
Kay, we can hear you.
Oh, good evening. I just want to say a couple of things about this issue. One is I'm a brand new commissioner, and this issue for Cassidy Gallo is just for beaches 1 and 2. And that's what makes it a Parks and Rec issue, is just beaches 1 and 2. That doesn't include the residential section or Roosevelt Inlet. And I just want to make sure that those stay in everyone's minds as 2 separate issues. And that having her request come forward puts me at a disadvantage as a commissioner because I've had no time to create a master plan for the beaches 1 and 2 and to go through that approval process and to come up with an appropriate budget. I think what I have heard from most people, most citizens, is that they do not want commercialization. There's a small poll in the Cape Gazette last week. People did not want commercialization. And so my opinion is reflecting that. And that I would like a chance to come up with a master plan, working with citizens and seeing what they want and what is appropriate for the future of beaches 1 and 2. So I appreciate your considering my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you, Kay. Appreciate your work. And certainly, we appreciate the fact that this is the newest park commissioner that we've established, and I know that it takes time to develop a plan. So thank you very much for your hard work. I would also note that in Anne Marie's report, we saw where bonfire applications are far outweighing anything else that's going on our parks and recs.
Right.
So this is an important issue that obviously people enjoy. But I do think that we're in a learning curve here. And Matt, I would invite you to come to the podium if you'd like to make comment about what you've seen and what's happening with your business at Roosevelt Inlet, although this request is relating to Beach 1 and 2.
So, Matt Corner, Quest Ventures. Without a doubt, bonfires have really gained popularity. I would say most of it was from last year because our tourists, our family members, everyone that had homes up and down the beach, they, instead of, our typical day was 4 o'clock, the parents were like, get out of the water, we got to go, we have reservations, we're going to Funland, we're going to other places, we're going to dinner. Instead, they stayed in Lewes. They basically like, can we keep all your kayaks and SUPs and floating mats until 8, till sunset? And then they were like, hey, can we have a bonfire? We're ordering takeout from one of the local restaurants. So the response I got from that last year was a boom in bonfires. But I also had a huge response of the best family vacation they ever had, because they're like, we saw the sunset 6 days. We weren't running around, leaving town, going other places. They were really enjoying what they did here. I've done the bonfires for 20 years. They have grown, a lot in the last 6 years. And this year, especially because, one is because we're in the paper all the time. People are calling me up, they're like, we didn't know you did that. Now they know, they're calling me more because there is a controversy of bonfires. So it's for me, it's great. But for people against the fires and everything, it's backfiring on them.
Let me ask you a question. It's folks who've gone to the beach and they're there all day long. It's not as though you have to set aside a place for them to do the bonfire. How does that work? They stay where they are?
So most of the fires we do from like 7 to 10 p.m.
Okay.
So even if they're at the beach all day, we're setting up around 5:30, 6:30, depending where we are. So So we will say it's on Market Street. We'll carry one down. If the beaches are crowded, we just set it up towards the dunes out of the way so that people can still get on and off the beach.
It's not that you reserve the spot.
And then it's, we're like, okay, it's almost 7. Someone go down there, we drag it to an open spot and put the fire up and set it up. We wait till they're there to light it.
Okay, I was just trying to make sure you didn't reserve a spot on the beach, which was put
Even
somebody
for
else to
weddings,
use
we
it.
don't reserve spots.
Okay, that's good. Good.
Right. When we have groups that are coming, it takes 20 minutes, sometimes an hour to set up. So we are down there, but my staff is running around setting up chairs, putting things up, putting up umbrellas, setting up tables, coolers with ice, things like that.
So this is something you're already doing, so.
It's something we're already doing. It's
Okay.
just when we have 3 fires in one night, yes, we're like, okay, let's set this one up. We find an open spot and go. They're coming here in a half hour. We're on to the next one. They're coming here in 45 minutes. They're coming here later. So, they have been set up 30, 40 minutes
So it's
prior.
something that's
So
already-
that's
Okay.
just for timely effect for the rest of it.
And you're always,
Thank you.
you and your staff are always present to light the fires, correct?
We are there to light the fires.
And to extinguish too as well.
And then to extinguish. We've had a couple repeat customers who, they know the drill, they do light it themselves. We had one on Massachusetts, they do a fire every 3 weeks. They've done 4 this year. So,
Well, it's something we're already doing, so we can assess it.
Okay, so but you're primarily doing it, are you doing it anywhere on the beach?
we've done Cape Shores, Beach 2, Beach 1. We've done any of the beach accesses that the people request, and then Roosevelt Inlet.
Okay, so you've done the entire
We've done
breadth
the
of
entire
the beach, okay.
And
Which is all already on legal with the city.
Yes, right. No, we don't-
Beach 2,
right,
we're doing
exactly.
Beach 1.
Right, no, I just, but just wanted, for purpose of discussion, I just want to make sure that,
Yes,
I mean, this is a very specific request, beach 1 and 2.
right.
Okay.
Okay.
So I have a quick question for Matt. So we saw earlier that there were 146 bonfire permits for July.
Right.
Any idea, Matt, how many
I don't have
you
the
guys did?
exact number. I can look back for sure, and I can talk with Janet and see how many slips have been in.
Just out of curiosity, I was just curious.
I'm going to say 60.
Okay.
We have some nights there's 4, some nights, and there might be 3 or 4 nights we don't have any, then there's 2, then there's 1. Just so people know, like, who are doing the fires. I did kind of break down like a percentage of, it's somewhat a guesstimate, but I would say about 20% are local businesses, clubs, churches, and youth groups. We've had probably 40% comes from guests that are staying at hotels, inns, rental homes. And then 40% are from locals and their second homes. So it's not just tourism, it's definitely the locals. The youth groups, that could be the church groups, it could be sports at the beach. They're bringing their baseball team over because they have someone at the beach, and here that's the end of the weekend, or, weekend party, so it's, it's a big variety. We've had 2 people just got proposed engagement, so, it can be varied for 2 people.
On a night like tonight, if you had a bonfire scheduled, would you notify Janet that it's going to be on Wednesday instead of Monday?
So,
Because of the rain?
Yes.
Yeah.
so, like tomorrow, I will submit, I have 2 on Tuesday, 2 on Wednesday, 2 on Thursday, I believe. So I put them out there for now because the weather does look good. Some of them will require a rain date. I got rained out of 3 on Saturday.
Sure you did.
Some of them cannot reschedule, but some of them can. And I say, hey, this, I'll write a note saying this one was rescheduled. We did pay once, but they'll see it as a new submitted form. But then on the weekends, we get a lot of people, they call me up after 4 o'clock Friday, somewhere Saturday or Sunday. They saw a fire on Saturday night, they want one on Sunday night. We submitted on Monday morning to get the charge to the city.
Okay, so you are submitting some retroactively then, basically?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep, some are, post-party.
All right, great.
Okay.
And you respond, Matt, to your clients, your customers will call you and say, I'd like to set up at such and such a location, correct? They identify where they want the...
Once they say they're interested in a party, we give them a menu. And it starts with date, name, phone number, emails, contacts, location desired, rain date, and then how many people also. Right. And then from there, it's a la carte menu. We want a fire. We want 10 chairs. We want umbrellas, tikis, cornhole. We need kayaks. We want coolers with ice, things like that. So it's a menu.
Okay. Thank you. If you haven't done it, you should try. Matt might have personally lit my fire, a week, 2 Fridays ago, I think. So, it's a good operation. Not promoting his business, but...
I guess my invitation is in the mail.
Right.
The other thing to build on what, not just what Carolyn said, is that this is essentially the second year that Matt's done this as an arrangement with the city.
Right.
And Matt's employing local people. He's employing teenagers who are families who live here in Lewes. He's taking money from his business and putting it back into the beach in the form of mobile mats, things that enhance people's ability to enjoy the beach that normally, because of mobility issues, would not. Right. So I think, to Carolyn's point, I think we have something in place that seems to be working, and it's still new.
Yep.
And I don't think that we need to be introducing new vendors until we see that this is potentially not working. It's meeting. It seems to be meeting the need in the relationship we have now.
Okay. Glenn, you want to comment at all?
No, I mean, there is an agreement in place, and I do think that it's something that's worth being very thoughtful. I thought Kay Carnahan's comments made sense because these sorts of things, it's a discussion that's up and down the coast. The other beach communities I represent, there's always how far do you go on commercializing the beach, and we've got concession portions of our code that we have to look to. We've got charter provisions that might have applicability, so I think easing into it is probably the better alternative.
And Kay does need the, excuse me.
I'm sorry.
And Kay does need that opportunity to come up with a plan. I mean, she's a new kid on the block. She really haven't had time to do anything.
So I guess
you got to give her that time.
the question I have is currently the contract with Quest only addresses the retail location at Roosevelt Inlet. Do we want to amend that to address the other services, or just kind of leave it status quo through next year and then revisit?
I think given the fact that
I don't
have a copy of the license agreement.
Excuse me?
My assumption was always that was simply around the physical location, that the understanding was that the services would agree with you up and down the beach. The idea of Roosevelt Inlet as a physical location was to prevent the need for the truck to be coming up and down like Bears or Cedar all day, and that the services were
I think
extended for all of the beach.
There are 2 different things here.
Who makes this the final agreement that's signed? I have one that basically says that he's He is authorized, so city hereby authorizes Quest to be the non-exclusive beach concessionaire for guided water tours, the rental of umbrellas, beach chairs, beach access chairs, stand-up paddleboards, kayaks, other appropriate recreational beach equipment, in the sole discretion of the city for Lewes Beach under the jurisdiction of the city. So it's pretty expansive.
Okay.
I mean, we do have the location where the shack can be that you get to say is here and only here, and there's dimensional requirements for it.
But the service area is the entire beach. That's the critical thing.
So there's a location at Roosevelt.
Yeah, right. That's an accommodation.
What triggered
The
the
service area is throughout the beach.
No, we understand.
What triggered the whole thing was your desire to put a shack there initially.
Yes.
That's really what triggered the initial discussion with you, because you already are doing some of the other things before already.
Okay.
Right. So, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Matt.
So we still are very much in a learning curve. Matt, I think your annual reports are really important to us in terms of how many you're serving, what you found that you're doing, and what the responses are. Obviously, working closely with Janet and keeping her in the loop is very critical. What I'm hearing here is a discussion that looks like we want to continue to monitor your activity. We recognize we have yet the rebalance of this season in '22 under an agreement with you. So, Council, is there a motion to allow this to go forward under the trial system that we have?
I don't know if there's any action we need to take.
I think...
Okay, are we okay with that?
I think you're saying you want to maintain the status.
Yeah, I think we need a motion to maintain the status quo.
Right, you could take a motion to maintain the agreement with Quest and not to...
Not to expand, that's where I was going. Okay, that's where I thought we were headed.
I'll make that motion to maintain the existing agreement that we have and not to expand that relationship with other vendors.
I'll second that.
There we go.
Okay, all of it. Does that, okay?
Yes.
All right.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. So obviously, when we get to the end of '22, then we'll reassess where we are. Okay?
Thank you,
Thank you, Matt. Appreciate you being here tonight. Okay, moving now on to item I-8. There's a request from the Bay Breeze Homeowners Association and Jefferson Apartments for the city to take over the ownership and the maintenance of a road serving Bay Breeze and Jefferson Apartments. This entrance to Bay Breeze and Jefferson Apartments, which sits on land that belongs to the owners of Jefferson Apartments, has been the access to Bay Breeze since its inception. I believe Richard Claypool's here to share with some more information with us. We have had letters from both of them. However, this is a private street that has not been maintained by the city. And we understand there was an original agreement between Jefferson Apartments and Bay Breeze for joint maintenance of this street, and apparently that has not succeeded, and the street has fallen pretty much into disrepair. And you're asking for us to take consideration of taking it over. Okay, you want to come to the microphone, Richard? And please identify yourself.
The president of the Homeowner Association, Trevor Bradshaw, is on the Zoom.
Okay, all right. Christine, could you elevate?
So he's speaking, not you? Or, okay, good. Okay. Just want to make sure if you're speaking, you're at the mic.
There he is, Trevor. Hey, Trevor, are you with us? Probably have to need to unmute yourself.
Yeah.
There he goes.
Yes, hello.
Hi, Trevor.
Hi. So I know there's been some correspondence between Mayor Becker, the City Council, Ms. Townsend, and myself. Basically, the community at large just is concerned with a few issues about Mariner's Way and how it connects to our neighborhood. I know we've shared some correspondence, so I'll try to be brief, but just so everybody in. The number one concern is safety in a number of aspects. A street light has been knocked down there. There are a lot of people who walk through there, ride bikes through there, even into the evening at dusk. We're concerned about safety. There's no markings on the street. There's no signage to indicate, yielding or anything where people are coming on and off Kings Highway onto Mariner's Way. In addition to safety, a little bit more broadly, we're concerned that if the roads don't get plowed, emergency vehicles, we only have one access to the neighborhood. that could halt the ability of emergency vehicles to enter our neighborhood. There's potholes all over the roadway. Those kind of cover the safety concerns. And also aesthetically, there's no maintenance going on. It gets overgrown. The trees get overgrown. They hang over the roadway. There's a lack of maintenance on the medians there, the concrete medians on Mariners Way as well. And overall, speaking for the residents of my community, they've raised these concerns to me a number of times that they'd like to see a way that we can work with the city, because we think the best option is for the city to take over maintenance of Mariners Way so that they can provide those services as our neighborhood is incorporated into the city. Overall, that's generally the position we have. I'm not sure if there's any questions or more detail you would need from us, but that's kind of the position we had that we sent in our letter. And I just wanted to reiterate that position here tonight.
Thank you, Trevor. I think we would concur on the condition of the street, for sure. It's certainly fallen into disrepair. I think Anne-Marie had asked Charlie to look at it, and Charlie, you have a proposal in terms of?
He's developed a cost estimate.
As a proposal to what it might cost to do it.
So Severn Management Company, back in 2018, took corings and had them analyzed, and based on that information, Charlie's developed a cost estimate. So, if you want to put that number out there, you go ahead.
Hey,
We need some clarification.
I can't put a high number out there now and then be accused of being low later, right? So anyway, yes, Anne-Marie and I have looked at this. She is correct, Severn Properties did get a geotechnical analysis done of that whole section by John D. Hines and Associates 2 years ago. We've gone out and looked at the site since then, and basically all we did was enlarge the areas that need to be patched from what John D. Hines had in 2019. We do have experience in Bay Breeze Estates just 5 years ago. So in my estimate, which I didn't say to you earlier tonight, but we did add in the glass mesh paving fabric that we used on the Bay Breeze Estates roads, where we just overlaid them, but we had the glass mesh. And the reason why we did that is because there's a whole lot of clay out in this area, which is, everybody says it's sandy, 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 but in this particular location, there's a lot of clay. And the glass mesh fabric creates some structural integrity. It's different from just like geofabric or like that you use for erosion control. It's got some structural integrity to it. So we were able to use that with good effectiveness on Bay Breeze. So we added that in, and that's a significant number in the cost estimate. The bid climate right now has got me worried, so I've put 20% on top of what I came up with. I wanted to do 30, but
20% of the existing number?
No, 20% above what my original estimate was for the bidding climate right now. Plus, it's so preliminary. So anyway, long and short of it is, with the engineering required to do this project, it came up to $347,925, which it's a big number, but it's a big area.
It is a big area.
It's wide. It's very wide. It's got several different transition areas. Right. I shouldn't even say this, but I'd love to take those islands and make them part of the stormwater management system with a great big landscaped area. And
rain garden.
Yeah, they did.
But that's over and above the 347.
I shouldn't have said it.
Well, we can get grant money for that. If that has water quality benefits, we can always do that as a project.
It definitely will, and also talk about someplace that's the entrance to Lewes. People coming in all the time on that side, so make it really look really good right there. But anyway, that's where I'm at.
347.
Did that?
Well, can we start with how we
part make
fell into such disarray?
your Excel spreadsheet?
No, because it's not a city-maintained road.
Right. So it didn't.
Yeah.
It's never been maintained, other than whatever has happened between the original agreement that was signed when Bay Breeze was developed with Jefferson Apartments, which called for a cooperative maintenance Did. By the two developments to maintain this entrance.
And that was a 1986 agreement. So that's.
But what happened to that?
And it runs with the land.
It runs with the land,
Right.
and there have been some complications. It hasn't.
It hasn't worked out.
It hasn't panned out. What my recommendation, and I've talked to several of you about this, is because it serves two communities and, many properties, it makes sense to be a public street. But typically, the city does not accept a street until it's brought to city standards. So we have a cost estimate. Senator Lopez has indicated that he'd be willing to make a contribution toward it, but it's not going to be, it's going to be...
It's a fraction of it.
It's a fraction of it.
Has he given you a number?
He said he could probably do about $50,000.
Okay.
And this particular area is also represented by Peter Schwarzkopf, and I have reached out to him, and he has not responded yet. So there may be additional monies available, but we're still looking at it.
It still leaves a pretty big...
Right.
Charlie, just a quick clarification. The 347 number, that includes the 20% additive, correct?
Yeah, right.
Thank you.
And engineering and any legal administrative costs.
Right.
So
Just
it's
wanted to
a
make sure.
What I describe as the total project cost estimate.
Thank you.
That's what we needed. Thank you very much, Charlie.
And
Before you leave, Charlie, does that include any kind of reconfiguration or just refurbishment?
Yeah, no reconfiguration.
Okay.
We do have, it's a tricky little project because if you just overlay it, you've got to blend in your overlay to both Kings Highway and Bay Breeze Estates entrance. By the way, this only goes just beyond the Bay Breeze Estates entrance.
It doesn't go all up.
it doesn't go into the apartment complex.
That's right, yeah.
Right.
Just the main road.
so you know.
Yeah, okay. And
Mayor, you may recall, Bay Breeze Estates roads were
pretty deployed.
maintained by the homeowners association for a really long time, and I don't remember. I think it was not very long ago, maybe 15 or 20 years ago, when the city took them over.
Right, and then when we got into looking at them, we found, as you suggest, with the glass mesh, that the substrate was not satisfactory. It was too unstable.
I mean, I'm getting into engineering stuff now, but the problem wasn't so much that the clay was not, what we proposed for the road wasn't good for, it wouldn't have worked, but when they started driving the construction traffic over all that clay, it started just giving away. So we had to change our approach in the field there.
And now that it's been 5 years since we put that glass mesh down, that is holding up well, correct?
Yeah, real well. Yeah.
I haven't seen
it out there all the time.
Yeah, I haven't seen any major problem, because I know that it was relatively a new process when we did it.
Yeah.
Charlie, one more question for you. The geotech analysis that was done by the Severn Management Company, I believe, they contracted that out?
John D. Hines, yeah.
Right. Did you have any issues, or were you satisfied with the analysis that they provided?
Absolutely. Yeah,
Okay.
it was well done. Yeah.
Right. Thank you.
Yep.
Richard, you look like you wanted to say something.
I would just like to reiterate.
Please identify yourself, if you would, just so
Richard Claypool, I'm a resident of Bay Breeze Estates, and just to reiterate something that Trevor had said. But to me, it's the incongruity of the city owning the streets running up to Mariners, owning the streets in Bay Breeze Estates. And you're right, they were done 5 years ago. They were done beautifully. They're holding up very well. And when we have storms, snowstorms, whatever, there's no maintenance performed at all by Jefferson. So we have the snowplows from the city doing a nice job on Kings, coming to Mariners, lifting the blade, driving up to the entrance to Bay Breeze Estates, Bay Breeze Drive, putting the blade back down, doing a beautiful job in Bay Breeze, leaving, and then we can't get out because Mariners isn't.
Got it.
I know it's an expensive proposition, very expensive, but I think it makes sense, and I think it's the right thing to do.
Okay.
So we'd like to see you proceed with that.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Richard. Okay. Comments from the table?
I don't know.
I mean, it's a big ask. I mean, you're, in the very beginning of your letter, you're saying it is a private road. And then you close by saying it's one way to bring a final connection, finalize your connection to Lewes, but you've also asked not to be connected to new areas that are coming up in Lewes. So you want to be still treated like a private HOA, but then have the city come in and refurbish. And what Charlie talked about in terms of getting ahead of your streets, if this had been maintained properly along the way, we probably wouldn't be looking at this figure. It's just in such disrepair now. It's a big ask for the rest of the city of Lewes to take that on.
I'm speaking to Trevor.
Yeah, Trevor's watching. Yeah,
I'm speaking to everyone.
I'm speaking to the whole. Could he hear? Yeah, Trevor could hear that. Okay. Can you hear? Trevor, do you have any comment?
I completely understand what you're saying, and as somebody who's only lived in the community for 2 years, honestly, like with all this going on, I myself feel like I'm often playing catch up with what's happened over the years and trying to get an understanding. I know Mr. Claypool has a letter from an attorney that we hired years ago to address the issue of the maintenance of that road with Jefferson Apartments owners. And my understanding of it is that, there was a payment made way back when for some work that needed to be done that never got cashed. They didn't do any maintenance, which we would have been paying for over that time. And I say we, I would have been in college or whatever back when. So we were never getting any kind of like, hey, this work's being done, and here's your part of that payment. So I understand it is a big ask. It is a big thing to lay at the feet of Lewes residents who might not live here. We understand what we're asking. However, I don't know how to go back in time and say, hey, okay, let me help take care of this back then. And I understand all of that. And I think our residents understand it too. We just think it would be to the benefit, like we said, it is the entrance to kind of, one of the first things you see coming down Kings Highway as you get to Lewes proper. We just think it would be to the benefit of the city of Lewes, and that's what. Yeah, and I understand what you're saying. It's a lot of money. It's a big ask, and some understanding that we can come to and do our part. We'd be appreciative of anything we can do to work with the city on this.
Okay.
Well, what would your part be?
That's a good question. As somebody who just represents the neighborhood, I don't have a direct answer to that. If there's early on, I'm sorry, I missed who said it specifically, something about $50,000 to take care of a few things up front. If there was some kind of cost sharing there, I'm not sure what proposals would be made. We're open to suggestions from the city and discussing any options that we could do to get this taken care of. I feel our neighborhood is determined to improve that road in some way, and we would be open to listening to and talking to you all about any possible solutions that we can look at.
But I think that, maybe you just heard the number for the first time tonight. I know when we first saw it, we were a little...
I fainted.
we were a little stunned. And so I think we're all digesting that number. And knowing that there had been this contractual arrangement between you, the Bay Breezes Homeowners Association and the Jefferson Apartments, we're sort of like, what's the participation that your two communities would be willing to make towards bringing this into a condition where we would consider accepting it as a city street and therefore going forward with maintaining it? I think you've heard Charlie make some recommendations about maybe the street's too wide, maybe we could do something with those medians to turn them into rain gardens or some other stormwater management system. So I think all of this is a lot to deal with. I'm not sure we can come to a decision tonight, but I do think it's good that we've started this dialogue, and I think now having a number that Charlie believes is credible for you to work with, it's important that your HOA consider what is the contribution that you would be willing to make towards this. It's got to be a significant number because as we've all admired here, this is not a project that is really, given the arrangement that pre-existed, that the entire city population should take on independently.
We've got a hand up on Zoom.
Okay. Thank you, Christine.
Ed Tesson has his hand up, so
Okay,
Christine's
Ed,
going to...
Anne Marie, the other question I have is the other night you represented that this type of project may not qualify for ARPA. If you go with some kind of stormwater treatment, like Charlie's talking about,
If we do some stormwater stuff, I mean, I don't know, one of the things we didn't even talk about is narrowing the pavement width, and that probably drives the cost up, though, right?
Pick up pavement.
Because you'd have to rebuild the curbs.
Right. They're pretty rough.
The curbs are pretty rough.
Yeah, they're not up to our standards.
That's true.
So we don't have anything on curbs in there.
So it sounds like we need a lot more information, but let's get Ed Tesson's question. Ed, can you hear us?
Hello.
Yeah, hey.
Ed Tessine, 35 Sussex. We, the residents of Highland Acres, continue to pay for our street as a condition of annexation into the city of Lewes, and I think it would only be equitable that those two organizations do that as well.
Okay, thank you, Ed. Okay.
I'm sorry, what do you mean by they pay for their street?
That HOA was, there was a fee assessed to them when the when the water and sewer was put in to Highland Acres. They were assessed an individual homeowner fee. Some people paid it directly, some people financed it. Maybe, Austin, you want to comment on how that was done?
And Charlie, I came on right when that.
Come up, well, one or both of you, come up and let's get this on the mic. Thank you. Do it.
Yes, I think it's a little apples to oranges because that water and sewer project tore up the entirety of our Sussex Drive in there, so we had to rebuild it, and it was integral to the loan that we got from the state.
And stormwater.
And we also did use the last round of, from the last recession, the federal, ARA. I can't even remember what the acronym stands for, but we used ARA money to bring down the cost of that. So there were public dollars put into that as well.
So that's totally different from this.
It's different. It's apples to oranges, I think. And not only that, we received, the entire water system was grant funded by the state of Delaware.
And this particular has nothing to do with utilities. Right, Austin, there's no utility work required for this. This is just
pavement.
Yeah, it's just pavement.
I did get a text from our maintenance department, and they said that they do plow a path in and out. They just don't plow the full width. So there is one.
Yeah. So they're making
plowed
egress policy.
There's an in and out.
So they don't actually lift
the plow.
Okay,
good. Thank you. That's helpful.
I think we should wait and see what kind of information.
Okay, all right. Carolyn, you're suggesting that we don't take no action here?
No, I don't think we should take any action here. I think we have to get a feel for just what it is that HOAs can do, what kind of money they can come up with, and then we should look at it from that perspective, from what we can from how we can help them. But for us to just foot that bill and then run, just doesn't make sense.
So
I don't think we're all going to fit. We're going to foot the whole bill. I mean, it's way too much. I mean, we're talking to
Our state senator, we're talking to the speaker.
$50,000 isn't a whole lot of money.
No, but there's other options here. I'm talking to Mark Schaefer on Wednesday morning.
Good.
About a whole host of things, and this is on the agenda for that, just to see whether there may be interest. So, I mean, we're going to have to piece this together through multiple stakeholders.
Well, that's more the reason to put it off until we find out.
Oh, no, I totally agree.
Right.
I'm just saying, but this is not going to be, I don't think, a Lewes, City of Lewes only project.
No, it's
right.
not. It's something.
Oh, gosh, no.
Right.
I want to make it clear here.
I think you just muted yourself. Or you're not lighting up, whatever.
I should it again.
I don't know, they're quirky.
Don't take your own.
Yeah. Is that?
No.
Just keep talking, sometimes it takes a while. Here.
I'll start singing and then
Okay.
All right. The critical thing I think that we need to drive home, the message as far as I'm concerned, is the message that Carolyn has suggested, and that is the first parties who need to meet and come to an agreement are the two homeowners associations. There's this long-term agreement that was put in place more than 40 years ago. It binds you to the maintenance of the road. It's a privately owned road, and you have the obligation to each other to make sure that you fund it. And I would encourage you all to come together and meet with them and see what you can work out, what arrangements you can work out.
Would you want myself and Charlie to take part? I mean, I'd be glad to kind of convene it and kind of help move the discussion along.
Facilitate it? Yeah, I think that's what has to happen.
But I think
the city's got a role here in convening.
Absolutely.
And looking and helping identify other sources that may be available. But I do think coming to the table from the HOAs, respective property owners, is critical to what we can do.
Okay.
And I think if we're looking to county council or we're looking to our state legislatures for assistance, that participation on the part of 2 HOAs would be looked upon very favorably. Right. Okay. So we will not be taking action on this evening, Trevor, but we will anticipate that Anne Marie will convene a meeting where we can get more information. Okay?
Thank you all very much for the time and for taking the moment to hear us out. And Anne Marie, I would be happy to communicate with you and find a time where we can get together and meet. And thank you all very much.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. We are now ready to move on to item I-9, which is presentation of possible action on a request that the city designate on-street parking spaces for Lewes Beach residents who do not have off-street parking. This as a result of a request that we've had from several residents who live on Lewes Beach whose property does not have any off-street parking. And we have made some accommodations in the past for full-time residents who are in excess of 75 years of age to have a dedicated parking space on the street. However, these individuals that have expressed interest are not full-time residents, but they are long-term property owners whose property provides either no alley or street or street access for a driveway or off-street parking. And this is not unique to Lewes Beach. There are many properties on this side of the canal that have similar kinds of situations. So I think if we're going to be looking at this, we need to look at it more globally than just on the beach. Right. And there are properties, you name it, whether it's Margaret Mulberry or Washington Jefferson or whatever, there are properties that do have no off-street parking that available. Now, obviously, we have a city code that requires that any new construction provide 2 off-street parking spaces, but many of these houses predate the 20th century even, and at that time there was no such requirement. So, and things have changed a lot. So, while I certainly respect the request here from these individual property owners, I do have a concern that this is not something that we can look at so limitedly as just considering the beach.
No, there's all kinds of
I don't
things.
think anyone's, I mean, in fact, when I first heard of this issue, it was from someone on Mulberry Street. And so, and that was a couple of years ago, and when I learned about that. I do want to address the full-time resident versus part-time resident issue here, because I've heard it multiple times, and as far as I'm concerned, the people who are requesting this from the Lewes Beach area, most of them are part-time. There's a couple, I think, who are full-time. And I personally don't see the relevance to that at all. And if they need for someone to have to be a full-time resident to be a requirement, they're not requesting that because they need that spot in January, December, or the off-season. When these spots really are needed is in the prime seasons, June, July, and August, sometimes September as well. I mean, for example, I was discussing this with someone today. The sign could read, resident parking only from May through, you could limit the time there, but I mean, I really don't see people driving down Lewes Beach in the off-season, parking in front of people's homes. There's plenty of regular parking available. So that's the one thing that I want to make clear from my perspective, I do not see as an obstacle.
Okay. I think
do you think that time frame would work for the streets on this side of the canal, like to Chestnuts, and is that this?
Probably, I think it actually would have to be extended. I mean, Lewes is very, very busy in September, October, downtown in particular. It is less busier on the beach side, but certainly downtown, it is busier.
Well, you have the same issue on Mulberry Market and whatever. I mean,
Chestnut.
they can't go out to dinner and come back home and park it. You have the same issue.
Right.
It's got to be addressed on both.
Is suggesting, and that is that we show some flexibility. It's possible that we might want to consider having a very prescribed, limited 90 days period that you're suggested May to Labor Day, let's say, and then have a longer period where you would have the parking privileges extended on the town side. And yet we would still be meeting the need. We would still, does that make sense?
It does, but I mean, I could also argue that September is a very, very busy time on Lewes Beach.
It is.
And so, I mean, I don't want to get into a situation where we're like getting so prescriptive about the beach versus here.
I'm not suggesting that we do that at all. I'm just suggesting that if we move in this direction, that we show some flexibility, if it's available to us. That's all.
I mean, we have to look at everything from zoning in terms of, I know in New York and in Jersey and in Dewey even they had it, you can, if you're resident, you have a resident parking thing from here to this period of time, to this period of time. And we have all kinds of things we need to look into, but we definitely need to look at it as a whole, not just Lewes Beach.
Of course.
Sure.
No.
If we were looking at a time-limited thing, I'd suggest we follow the meter period, which is May 1 to October 15th.
Oh, okay.
Which is what our meter season is.
Right.
So if you were looking at it. But you need to keep this so that people aren't trying to remember too many dates.
Right.
But I do think there's a lot more discussion that or a lot more investigation that needs to go on.
Absolutely.
Before we tackle this. And I know Anne Marie and her committee administratively are looking at the permit option, which might be another way to address this. And where is that at this point?
Well, so we've been, the focus has been on dealing with the no parking signage, what's in the code, and what's on the Bay Avenue plan, and resolving that. So once we get into the fall, we're going to delve into, I need Dennis Crawford to be part of that parking permit discussion, and he's otherwise occupied at the moment.
I see him on the streets all the time. Okay, so I think there is no action to be taken on this tonight, other than the fact that we have a lot more work to do.
Are there folks that are needing this arrangement imminently because of mobility issues that can be accommodated in some temporary way?
I think anybody with a medical condition, we've already done that in the past.
Don't they just necessarily put through some paperwork on that?
Well, so if somebody has a disability issue and has a handicap tag, they can request a handicap parking space on the street.
We've done that, actually mostly here on the town side.
Right, now it's not reserved for them, another person with a handicap tag can park there, but it's not up for general public.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so there's no action on item I-9. Moving then on to item I-10 is presentation of possible action on a deed conveyance to the state of Delaware. Ironically, this was a deed conveyance that was agreed to back in 2003 and somehow never was executed, and so we're being asked to execute this tonight. I think it's pretty self-explanatory. This relates to property adjacent to the state park. Glenn, do you have anything you want to add to that?
I do. I've looked at it, and clearly there was an agreement that was signed. I have no idea why it was.
I don't know why it fell through the cracks. That's before I was even involved, so I don't know what that explanation.
Clean up then.
Well, I think this all goes back to the whole thing where we thought SPI Pharma just didn't have a lease because our file on SPI Pharma just kind of stopped at some point in time.
And I guess my question would be, are we confident that SPI Pharma has met their obligation?
So this was brought to me by DENREC.
I understand.
So,
and they are the beneficiaries.
Right.
They're receiving.
Yes.
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 Because, thank you. Right. Thank you. Okay. Thank you very much for that.
Are there any further questions about this? Okay. So we need a motion to approve this.
So I didn't actually put the deeds in here.
Yeah.
But it's...
They're there.
Right.
Right.
Okay. Do we have a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion that we approve the deed conveyance to the state of Delaware for the site 335-5.00-7.00. And I think that's the only parcel, if I'm reading this correctly, that is affected by this.
No, it's two others.
Is it the other two as well?
Yes.
It is right here.
Here's the listing.
Okay, I apologize for that mistake then. All right, there are total of three parcels.
Correct.
And I'm going to read aloud the parcel numbers. 3-35-5.00-1.01. Second one is 3-35-5.00-4.00. And the last one is 3-35-5.00-7.00.
Thank you, Tim. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Andrew. Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Nice to close that, Lou.
Yeah.
A little late.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Not a year before its time.
Not a decade before it's time. Okay. Moving then on to item I-11, presentation of possible action on an ordinance to amend municipal code of the city of Lewes to eliminate section 70-53 in its entirety. This section excludes the requirement for that new residents include fire suppression systems. You'll recall that the current building code, we adopted, removed the requirement that fire suppression systems be installed, so we excluded it. And we had a discussion when we were approving Lewes Waterfront Preserve about the need to add fire suppression systems to this townhouse development. And this proposal then would remove the existing exclusion of fire suppression systems and make it require that any new construction within the city limits would be required to have a fire suppression system. This is a trend that is moving throughout the country, and one that obviously saves lives and prevents some property damage in the long run. And I commend Andrew for his efforts to bring it forward in reference to Lewes Waterfront Preserve. Thank you very much. And but I do think it is something, when you look at health and safety, it warrants our consideration. It is a provision that's in the codes that the new building codes that we would be considering, and it would make us the first community in southern Delaware to have adopted this particular code. I think the only other community in the state of Delaware that has this code is Newark. So I think it does add a cost factor to the construction of a new home, but I do think the health and safety issues outweigh the additional cost. So I've opened it up for discussion.
Did you want to raise the issues with coordinating with BPW? Because that was something that I think that you
So this is really, we put in here a resolution to set a public hearing, because since this is a drastic change, we thought it was important.
It is one.
Okay.
But Austin's already preparing, he and I talked today, so.
No, we have to have a public hearing on this.
We do not have to, but just in the
interest.
In the interest of people not being blindsided by it.
Government.
So for
the
where we
ordinance
are
to
now, though, the people drawing permits would have the understanding that this is currently under our review?
They would, I think with, it's hard on pending ordinance for something that's so dynamic, because like with a subdivision or something, that it's months in the process. With a building permit, we turn them around in a week. I think it's hard to.
Remember, the pending ordinance doctrine really grew out of zoning ordinances. This is not in the zoning code per se. I've seen it applied in other contexts, but it's generally a zoning code type of a issue. So I think that once this is introduced, tonight being introduced, I don't think it's going to stop application. I mean, if an application comes in tomorrow, they're not going to be required to put in. Yeah.
Well, wait a minute. Can we put some meat on the bone on that one? If you were talking about a subdivision where a tract home developer was building multiple homes at one time, and his plan was to build multiple homes at one time, is there no benefit that we can derive from signaling to the developer the builder that we are actually we're moving in this direction?
Oh, I think that's separate, because the building code, you can get a subdivision approved today and record it.
Right.
And
I understand that part.
if you draw a building permit in a year, and we've adopted the 2021 code, you're subject to the 2021 code, not what was in place at the time. So for the purposes of a developer, anything that's in the pipeline now, this would likely apply to, because they're not going to pull permits before.
That's exactly the point that I was trying to make. We approve one-offs, that, the one building at a time fairly quickly.
Right.
But the project development, multiple home, is a much more involved, protracted process.
Right, I think the point is that nothing you're doing tonight legally binds anybody to anything, but the point that Marie is making is that, so you're moving that direction tonight, everybody will see it in the paper. By the time that sort of development is ready to pull permits, this will be in place. But it does, I think it does signal the message to anybody who's...
I think that we're moving in that direction.
Right.
I think anybody who's getting ready to draw a building permit is going to look at this. That we're talking about it tonight. We're talking about having we schedule a public hearing. They're going to be at our public hearing.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So, Austin, obviously this has an impact on your water supply. You want to talk to us about the BPW and how this would impact you?
So Charlie and I were talking ever since Friday, trying to get a game plan together on our end so that we're not blindsided. And the theory is, and it's tough here because you have a lot of seasonal residents, to where if you were to tie in, and I've reached out to Worcester County because they do the similar thing, but the question is, do you have a tap that's tied into the existing water service? Well, what happens when somebody shuts off their water for the season? So being able to delineate where exactly they would tap, or just saying that you would have to create a new tap off of the main, obviously adding a new tap, tendency for a leak, tapping going into a brand new road. So these are all the things that we're taking into consideration. And Charlie and I are going to work on it, but I thank you guys for letting us know this is moving forward, and we'll work hand in hand so that...
I think that to the extent that you and Charlie could talk about at a public hearing, what the new tap situation would be, especially for the seasonal homes. There are people who turn their plumbing off less and less now that, people are pre-COVID, post-COVID, they're still sticking around.
Yeah, and Dawson's exactly right, and there's some nuances, because not every system is what we call a wet system, some are dry systems, so there's some nuances that need to be worked out. We're working on the subdivision code revisions, so I've already developed draft language for all of our review that's kind of summarizes all the things that we're kind of talking about on this end.
I think being able to be an FAQ kind of thing, if we're going to have a public hearing, be able to share that information would go a long way to answering some of the questions that may arise.
The other thing is that, we've got the water system modeled, so we can plug in a fire demand and see how the distribution system reacts to make sure. Generally, there's plenty of water and there's plenty of pressure. I just worry about some 3-story house somewhere in Lewes that you got to get the water up to the top, that just making sure we have enough pressure to do that. So my point in telling you that is that as each subdivision or individual home comes in, we're going to want to look at it from the pressure point of view by modeling it.
Yeah. And they would be subject to a plumbing permit.
Correct.
Right?
Yeah.
So,
Right.
okay.
I can share one personal observation. I own a 3-story property that did have a fire suppression system go off in the middle of the night due to a malfunction.
Yeah.
There's plenty of pressure.
Yeah. There usually is.
Unfortunately.
Surprisingly, sprinklers don't use that much water. It's like
They don't.
25 gallons a minute.
But it's amazing how much damage they do.
I'm sure.
Thank you.
Okay, so we need to set a public hearing, I think, for this. Did we even sample a date here?
So we put out the 23rd because it's not something that's required to have a public hearing, so you don't have the 15-day
yeah,
newspaper ad.
7
We will
days.
still put it in the newspaper this week.
Oh, I think WBOC is watching tonight, or RDE.
But we'll also do the ad, just because it is a hearing, but it's not subject to the 15 days. So we've looked at August 23rd
At 6
at
o'clock.
6.
Okay.
I'm going to verify that's the Rollins Center.
Yeah, it has to be Rollins
Yeah.
Center.
I'm just,
Yeah.
sure the public
Yep,
knows.
yep.
Yeah,
And that's
thank you
at
for
6 o'clock,
asking.
you said?
6 o'clock.
6 o'clock on the 23rd,
Yep.
Rollins. Okay.
Okay. So we need a motion to set that date and time.
I'll make a motion
Yep.
to set a public hearing for August 23rd at 6 o'clock.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay. Second all around. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Any opposed? Motion carries. Moving on to I-12 is an extension, a lease extension for 305 Cedar Street, excuse me. This is a standard lease extension, correct?
Nothing new here, Mr. Mayor. Standard by right extension.
Okay, and I think we have some photographs regarding the property. Looks as though we have some large shrubbery that's overgrown into the right-of-way.
So we can tie that to the extension.
Yeah.
If they need to get that taken care of.
Okay. I think that would be the only condition I see that would be of concern here. Okay, is there a motion regarding this?
I move that we extend the lease on 305 Cedar.
Subject to the removal of the...
Subject to removal of the overgrown trees in the right-of-way.
Okay. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Andrew. Motion and a second. All in favor?
I have a question, please.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Okay, that's okay.
But my question is, I understand the ask that they will have to remove the vegetation. Do we give them so many days to resolve that? Or is it just put out there that they have to do
Well,
it?
we wouldn't sign it until it's done.
Right, I see. Okay.
Okay.
So in effect, this is notice to them to get it
Yep,
removed?
it will be tomorrow.
Okay, just wanted to make sure I
Yep.
understood how that worked. Thank
Okay.
you.
So any further questions?
No, thank you.
Call the question. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Moving on to item I-13, lease extension for 10 Indiana Avenue. Again, this is a standard lease extension.
Also a standard by right lease extension, Mayor.
Right. And here again, looks as though we have some perhaps overgrowth shrubbery. Is that true, Anne Marie?
I think that's further,
Is that further beyond the property line?
that's beyond the property.
Okay. Okay, so then it's,
Okay. There is some brickwork that's in the right-of-way. If you look at the top right
that's what I
photo.
thought, yeah.
Yeah.
The brickwork, yep. What is your pleasure on that, Council?
Make a motion to approve the lease extension for 10 Indiana.
Leaving the brickwork as it is?
It's pervious material, right?
It's clamshells, I think.
Well, it's clamshells of the driveway, but I think the space between the two driveway entrances is brick.
What is that?
Right. I think it's brick.
No, is that
Yeah,
what it is? Okay, this.
Yeah, that's what,
Oh, okay.
It's flat.
flat, but brick.
Drive on it, park on it, it's just there.
Right, right.
Well, we wouldn't be able to know if it's pervious unless we looked at the material and also whether it's placed in sand or whether it's placed in concrete.
Correct.
Right.
But
Yeah, these are clamshells in the driveway, I believe, correct?
Still considered,
That's right, that's what I
considered
remember.
impervious. Clamshells are considered impervious.
Yes, they are, unfortunately.
Yes, yeah. Well, actually, does the state of Delaware consider them impervious? I know
Yes.
Maryland
Yes.
does,
Yes.
but what about Delaware?
Yes.
Yes, they do.
They do now?
Yep,
Okay,
found
because
out
that,
about
okay, that was,
Yes,
Yeah, we
once they're compacted, they're...
thank you. I'm going to raise an issue,
Go.
but is there a motion on
There's a
motion?
motion and a second.
Okay,
There's a motion, no second yet.
okay.
We need a second for the
so
motion.
you should get a second.
Right, we
before-
need a second for the motion.
A second.
Okay, so
So can I clarify, is the motion to allow the brickwork then to stay in
the motion
place?
is silent on the brickwork.
Okay, I just want to be clear that if you adopt this and extend a 99-year lease, that you're not giving them a 99-year blessing for that, so it's still an encroachment in the right-of-way. If somebody, a future council wants to have it removed, they can do that.
Correct.
Regardless of this motion on this lease extension.
Okay. Okay,
I'm going to make a statement here, and I'm going to bring to everyone's attention the document that came with this lease, and it has to do with the survey. And the survey is professionally prepared, but it does not include any improvements on the site. So this document is, it's nice because it shows us the lot lines, but it does not show us anything about the relationship of the house or the structures on the lot. And I think this is an insufficient document for us to include in our records for approval or when we are approving a lease. If this is an example of what is acceptable, I think we need to clarify what our requirements are for a survey.
Normally, a plot plan does require placement of the structures on the property.
Right. And I have not, this is the only one I've ever seen that appears like this. This would appear to be a blank lot with no structure on it.
That's probably what they plan for it to look like next week.
Yeah, that's what it would look like next, exactly.
That's exactly right.
But I don't like what this.
Nothing there.
Right, I don't like what this looks like.
Then request.
I don't believe the property owner's here. Are you here, sir? Would you like to come up and speak to us? I have not had the pleasure of meeting before. Thank you.
Before he does, I'll just mention that it's a boundary survey because we're leasing the land. We're not leasing the structures or anything on it.
We required a survey to show the structures so we know whether or not there's
encroachments.
Exactly.
Right. And,
thank you, Mr. Harrison. Thank you.
What's the question?
Well, I think, first of all, we appreciate you coming, and you're the owner and the inhabitant of the property, is that correct? Okay, and so the question is, the lease, the plot plan that was submitted shows none of the structure.
There's a house there. I don't know, I looked through my settlement documents, I didn't have a site plan with the houses and all.
Okay.
This house was, you may remember Leo Medish, of the Back Porch Cafe. This was his house, and it had fallen into very bad shape when we bought it 5 years ago. And we didn't knock it down, but we improved it, spent a lot of money doing it. And a lot of people think it's, if you go down 10 Indiana, it's a
I know where it
pretty
is.
house.
Yeah.
But I don't think I have a plot plan. I mean,
It shows the structure.
Yeah.
right.
Okay.
And that's I think that's the question that we have is we get what's on record, and a lot of times it's when properties are being sold, so there's a current survey. Right. So does council want for us to require a new survey for every lease extension? Because that's not...
That's the only way you're going to be able to address.
Right, and that's not, to my knowledge, what we had been directed before, just that...
Well, we discussed it a month ago, right, in a meeting, that we would be moving towards requiring up-to-date surveys.
Well, you and I talked about it in a meeting, just us, not in a public meeting, so...
Well, okay, I apologize. If I
So if council wants that, that's fine.
Well,
It's-
right, because my associates here might recall that last month or 2 months ago when we approved a lease extension, we approved leases that had documentation that was 10 years old or older and was not reflective necessarily of what is currently on the property. And so I think I would suggest that we adopt if we have to do this through an official motion, do we need to do it that way? How do you want to do this?
Well, there's a motion on the table now, so you have to go through whether you're going to... Right.
Do we have to withdraw the motion? But this is an administrative thing. Does it require council to instruct staff how to proceed?
Yes.
If we're changing what's required for...
But it's not, no, we require a survey And what we're not getting are current surveys, and we're not getting surveys that are complete.
Yeah,
So, but it qualifies as a survey.
Yeah.
So do we need to be that specific?
Yeah.
That prescriptive?
If that's the type of survey you want, I mean, I think it needs to be a policy established by city council, because it is going to be an additional cost factor.
Right, there's a cost that goes to the property owner.
Right.
That,
Right.
it's fine, but I think it does need, it's a change in what we've done, so I think it,
Could I
Please, sir.
make a suggestion that whatever you do is prospective?
I thought that would be your suggestion.
Well, those things run about $700-800.
Yeah, I'm aware of that. Right, okay. All right. So we have a motion on the floor to approve the lease extension without a detailed survey of the property. Okay, we have a motion and a second. We'll call it.
I think we do that, but with the understanding that we look into whether or not this is something
The
we
future.
should do.
Okay.
Yeah, so I would second it under those circumstances.
Okay. So all in favor of approving this motion?
Aye.
That would extend this lease for 99 years?
Aye.
Aye.
I'm going to abstain.
Okay. Motion carries 4-1, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. With one abstention. Thank you very much, Mr. Herson. Okay, moving then on to item I-14, which is a license for 202 West 3rd Street. This is a historic house located behind St. Peter's. Been there a very long time. Has recently sold, and this does have a survey that shows very detailed what's gone on here, or where the house is, how the house is situated. And I believe that, from the looks on your face, sir, you would like to speak. Please come and talk to us.
I'm Daniel Myers here on behalf of the owners of the property.
Thank you, Mr. Myers.
And all we're trying to do is to get permission to keep what's there. We have information, the house was built prior to 1868. We know it was in that location in 36.
Okay. Right. And your relationship to the property, are you representing the owner at this point?
Yes.
Okay.
This came up as a part of a real estate settlement. We got the survey and noticed the encroachments.
Okay. All right.
I mean, I'll go ahead and make a motion on this. So this house has been here for, as he says, forever, so let's just make the motion to give them setbacks that they need. I mean, it's just,
Okay.
it's a no-brainer.
All right. Any other comments from the floor?
Was there a second?
Yeah, he's saying he would, did you say, was that a motion?
Yeah, I'll make the motion.
Okay, you make the motion, then we need a second.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, Khalil.
Yes, no, I was just going to say that he didn't have an opportunity to look at the last text that you sent out on this property, and I was trying to show him.
Yeah.
When it came to encroachment, the area. So, yeah, no, I'm fine.
Okay.
I'm fine.
So we have a motion and a second to allow the encroachments to remain as they are. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Thank you very much, sir. Okay. I think that we have completed this agenda, and we do not have an executive session scheduled for this evening, so we could entertain a motion to adjourn.
I make a motion that we adjourn.
I'll second that one.
I think we probably don't need to call a vote on this.
No, I don't think so.
All in favor?
I think we can just do it.
I think the door hit you on the way out.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Since the beginning.
Okay, that's fine.